verdadeira história por trás do casamento do século e os anos conturbados que se seguiram. Em toda a vida, e mesmo depois da morte, Diana despertou fortes emoções. Mas até hoje ninguém analisou cada fase de sua vida do ponto de vista daqueles que eram próximos a ela. A história de Diana começou no coração da aristocracia inglesa. O casamento dos pais, Johnny e Frances Spencer, foi o acontecimento social de Londres em 1954. Os dois vinham de famílias ligadas à monarquia. Eles começaram vivendo aqui, em Park House, em uma propriedade da rainha, onde em 1961 nasceu Diana.
When I look back to life at Park House, I do think to myself what a wonderful, free and easy life we had. Always, I remember just laughter and jokes. Diana was a real tease. She loved to eat. She'd go into the kitchen and she'd chatter away to the staff and cajole them into giving her this and giving her that.
Just a happy little girl. I mean, all those children were full of fun. And she was 3 years older than her little brother, and her two sisters were rather more than that older than her, so she did have a little bit of an older sister or a motherly way that she looked after her little brother, and it was very endearing.
Diana enjoyed going to the beach. They would have competitions to see who could take off from the top and jump the furthest down. Some of them used to roll the whole way down. They would wander around collecting shells. It was a very carefree time.
Quando Diana tinha 7 anos, seus pais se divorciaram. A partir dali, Diana passou sua infância alternando entre a casa da mãe e do pai. Nos últimos anos, a infância triste de Diana foi relembrada. Quando o casamento com o príncipe Charles acabou, os amigos dele disseram aos escritores que o comportamento de Diana indicava um grande distúrbio mental, começando com o divórcio dos pais e acabando mais tarde no casamento. A escritora que recebeu vários relatos dos amigos do príncipe Charles sobre o comportamento de Diana foi Penny Junor.
I believe that Diana was suffering from a severe psychological disorder. And I think that she had this disorder when she went into the relationship. I think she had it, she developed it as a child.
Mas aqueles que conheciam Diana na época contam uma história diferente. O divórcio dos pais foi litigioso, mas ela não sabia dos motivos. E depois disso, viu o pai e a mãe muitas vezes.
Well, of course, any divorce is bound to affect children. I don't think it affected Johnny and Frances' children any more or any less than any others. After all, they were not particularly short of cash. They had two loving parents, and despite the parents being divorced, were as happy as could be expected.
Diana's childhood was extremely happy, contrary to so many versions.
I did not notice any way that the instability which she showed later started in her childhood. No, definitely not. I'd certainly never noticed it.
In the security of her own home, she became very extrovert, more or less to the point of showing off, particularly in skills that she knew she had, such as her swimming. she'd run to the top of the slide and stand there poised, and she was beautiful and slim, and shout to everyone, "Look at me, look at me."
Diana não era muito estudiosa, mas tinha talento para a música, a natação e a dança.
Diana was popular at school. She was part of a very big group who were very lively, full of fun. Diana certainly wasn't the leader of the group, but neither was she just a hanger-on.
Em 1975, o avô de Diana morreu e ela herdou um título.
She rushed along the corridor with her dressing gown billowing out behind her, saying, "I'm a lady, I'm Lady Diana." She was so excited.
Quando Diana tinha 15 anos, o pai se casou novamente com Rain, a condessa de Dartmouth.
Well, gosh, I think Diana was very upset. She was devoted to her father, and I think perhaps any woman who came on the scene and wanted to take up all her father's time, she wouldn't have been too happy.
She was quite aware, I feel, that she was struggling with her schoolwork. She did try, and I think she hadn't a clue why she wasn't good. I think the underlying troubles at home in her family just affected her concentration. Her mind was somewhere else.
Diana não ia bem nas provas, mas mostrava talento em outras áreas. Ajudava a organizar bailes para os pacientes deste hospital para deficientes físicos e mentais.
Diana was actually very relaxed, which was quite amazing because it was intimidating and overwhelming to walk into that huge place with the level of noise and to see some of the very severely handicapped people that we actually did have. I can remember seeing Diana do something that I was quite amazed because she appreciated that when people in wheelchairs were taken onto the dance floor, because the handles are behind them, they were being whizzed around, but they weren't actually dancing in the same way as other people. Diana danced backwards and drew the wheelchair towards her by holding the arms of the wheelchair. Now, that actually is incredibly agile and clever.
Enquanto Diana ainda estava na escola, o príncipe Charles vivia em um mundo totalmente diferente.
Les problèmes du monde d'aujourd'hui seront les leurs demain. Et c'est à vous.
A bit impatient, an inquiring mind, very much like his father, full of ideas, very much like his father.
I'd known the Prince of Wales since he was about 16. He was wealthy, he was good-looking, he was intelligent, he was sporting, he was a man of action. He had all the aces.
There'd been a lot of talk about the dangers of this dive, the water so cold that a minute's exposure could cause paralysis.
He hated the phrase, and he won't like hearing it again, but I mean, he was described sometimes as action man. And there he was, unquestionably the most eligible bachelor in the entire world.
Para Diana e suas amigas de escola, o príncipe Charles era um homem atraente.
She had photos of him. She seemed to idolize him.
Charles teve breve namoro com Sarah, a irmã mais velha de Diana.
Finally, she met him, and she rushed into school the following Monday saying, "I've met him, I've met him." And it was like a sort of ongoing fairy tale, and we never dreamed that it would actually come true.
O homem que Diana Spencer acabara de conhecer enfrentava o maior impasse de sua vida.
Who was he going to marry? Somewhere along the line he'd said, maybe 30 might be a good time to get married. Often, with great respect to those who were named, I mean, completely dotty. Nothing wrong with the girl or the young woman in question, but never in a million years was she going to be the one. It just went on and on and on.
De estrelas de cinema a princesas europeias, o príncipe Charles se envolveu com as mulheres mais sofisticadas do mundo. Mas em questão de meses, ele ficou noivo de uma garota que acabara de sair da escola.
Concônica, todos querem sair na foto. Alguns eventos podem mudar o mundo para sempre. Em setembro, um ano depois dos atentados em Nova York, People and Arts lembra a data com 2 programas marcantes. Você vai conhecer a cara do mal, a logística de uma grande conspiração e entrar no coração de quem ainda não se consolou. Em setembro, em People and Arts, faça a conexão com aqueles que viram de perto o mundo mudar. Bem mais perto que você. Entre no coração e na mente daqueles que vêm lutando nesta terra coberta de sangue. 2 povos, 2 pontos de vista. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts.
Essa é uma galáxia não muito distante. Essa é a nossa casa. Mas por quanto tempo? Descubra como nasceu o nosso universo e para onde ele está indo.
Earth would start getting hotter and hotter. It looks like a train wreck, a cosmic train wreck. Black holes will shred you apart. There's no hope for survival.
Qual o destino da Terra e da vida sobre ela? Universo exposto. 8 de setembro às 9 da noite no Discovery Channel.
Ce sont les choses qui latam mes coisas à la vida.
O que interessa para ele é a música. Não importa a raça, a língua, o país, as raízes.
For me, it's all just music that I love, that I'm passionate about.
As misturas sonoras estão em toda parte e David Byrne está sempre em busca de músicos que não têm medo de arriscar. Conheça o homem por trás destes excêntricos experimentos. David Byrne, em busca de novos ritmos. Amanhã, em People and Arts.
Sabe quando eu vou poder comprar um carro assim? No dia de São Nunca.
São Nunca?
É, o dia chegou.
Toda a linha Ford com IPI reduzido. Aproveite! Ford Ka com taxa de 0,5% ao mês. Ford Focus Sedan por R$ 32.990. Ford Ranger por R$ 51.120. Promoção dia de São Nunca. Preços como você nunca viu.
Como?
Um tipo de atadura.
Quando?
À meia-noite.
Por quê?
Você mentiu para mim.
Quem? Nesta nova temporada, Sam vai se deparar com os casos mais arrepiantes que você pode imaginar. E não vai parar de investigar até encontrar todas as respostas. Não perca nenhum episódio de Testemunha Silenciosa. Todas as sextas, em People and Arts.
Diana estava no último ano escolar na Suíça, mas não completou o curso e foi morar em Londres. Em 1979, após estudar balé e culinária, ela se candidatou a 2 empregos de meio turno para cuidar de crianças.
The agency read her references and they described her as sweet-tempered, wonderful with children, and willing to do whatever she's asked. My doorbell rang a day or 2 later. She said, Mrs. Robertson, I'm Diana Spencer, so pleased to meet you.
She was never trained. She came purely as an assistant, but she did have a natural way with children. She was very good at getting down to their level, both physically and mentally. She didn't mind at all sitting on the floor, having children climbing all over her.
During the interview, what I liked most was that she focused totally on Patrick. She was ruffling his hair or handing him toys or giving him a little squeeze or a pat. Just absolutely an instant connection between the two of them. I never even checked her references further. I hired her on the spot.
Charles era muito ligado ao tio-avô, Lord Louis Mountbatten. Mountbatten providenciara um quarto em sua casa de campo onde Charles podia ter privacidade com as namoradas.
Because his own grandfather had died when he was a very small boy, and my father somehow, stepped into that position, and they were very, very close. Prince Charles always asked his advice about every sort of thing, and they also had a lot of fun together and a lot of laughs together. Got up to all sorts of things together.
Quando Lord Mountbatten foi morto por uma bomba do IRA, o príncipe Charles ficou arrasado. Naquela altura, Diana desfrutava das festas e dos bailes da sociedade.
She looked magnificent whenever I saw her that summer. Quite lovely, and she seemed to have a great number of admirers. The time I remember her best was at a big ball at Belvoir Castle. Indeed, Prince Andrew was at that dance, and he danced with Diana, and of course he was her age, so that was all absolutely fine.
Naquele verão, Diana teve sua primeira chance de impressionar o príncipe Charles em um churrasco na casa de campo.
We sat down on a bale at the barbecue. I said, "You looked so sad when you walked down the aisle at Mountbatten's funeral. It was the most tragic thing I've ever seen. My heart bled for you when I watched. I thought it's wrong. You're lonely. You should be with somebody to look after you."
Logo depois, Charles convidou Diana para ficar com ele e os pais na propriedade Balmoral, na Escócia. A família Spencer tinha uma relação estreita com a família real. A avó de Diana, Lady Fermoy, era a dama de companhia da rainha mãe.
Both grandmothers were involved, really, you might say, in the courtship. Both families were very enthusiastic about it taking place. It was definitely time that he got married, and here comes a girl who appears to be entirely suitable. So it's obvious that both families would encourage it and do what they could to promote it.
Anos depois, os comentaristas reais afirmaram que naquela altura, no início de seu relacionamento com o príncipe Charles, a suposta instabilidade mental de Diana já começava a transparecer.
Diana suffered from borderline personality disorder as defined in Volume 4 of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders.
If you don't resolve the damage, you take it with you into adulthood, where it can affect your relationships with men.
The prince had been handed an almost impossible task.
Mas se a nova namorada do príncipe Charles sofria de um distúrbio de personalidade, sua empregadora não havia notado nenhum sinal.
It was a huge step to hand over Patrick to a stranger in a strange city where we had no neighbors. We really didn't know anybody. But Diana just struck me as so sensible and grounded and committed to Patrick.
When she worked with us, she was a very normal, straightforward teenager. She was very shy, she was very kind, she was very considerate, always aware of others.
I really had no concerns about her being flighty or irresponsible. She was a very sensible young woman.
O público logo soube do namoro entre Charles e Diana.
And we first spotted her colleague Arthur Edwards, who was the photographer I worked with. He and I spotted her at a polo match.
I walked out with my camera and she just posed up. I thought, that's it, you know. And then I checked her age and found out she was 19. And I thought, Prince Charles, 30. He's running around with a 19-year-old girl. Doesn't sound right, so I didn't know about it.
Durante a segunda visita de Diana a Balmoral, outro fotógrafo foi pouco mais além.
We knew where Prince Charles's favourite fishing spots were, and we got to one, and we spotted a girl with him. I jumped out the car, and the girl disappeared into the trees behind Prince Charles, and he continued to fish as if there was no one with him. I watched for ages. Then I saw a hand coming round the tree with a compact mirror in her hand, and she pushed it round and wiggled it about to see where we were, and then walked away in a straight line, keeping the tree between us and her. And I thought, my God, who is this he's got? This is interesting.
Ele não conseguiu fotografar o rosto de Diana naquele dia, mas seu rival do The Sun se lembrou dela na partida de polo e relacionou os fatos.
She burst into my bedroom and said, I have something important to tell you, Mrs. Robertson. And I was blowing my hair dry, and I said, oh, go ahead, tell me, Diana. And she said, no, I'd like your full attention, please. And she told me that when I left for work, I would see photographers and reporters at the end of the Muse. And again, I did a double take and said, good heavens, Diana, what have you done?
We had television crews front and back. We had photographers hanging out of trees, peering in windows. And I said, what are they doing here? And a rather embarrassed Diana said to me, well, actually, I think it could be something to do with me. So I said, oh.
I asked if it was with Andrew, because I knew it was, they were the same age. And she said no, and, she was blushing and kind of looking down at the floor and, very modest, very demure, very Diana, very understated. She said, no, actually, I'd been with Prince Charles. And I just couldn't believe it. I said, oh, they're terribly exciting. Do you think anything's going to develop?
We found this nursery school, the Young England Kindergarten. I knocked on the door. Does Lady Diana Spencer work here? Yes. Would she come out and have a photograph taken?
They hung around and wouldn't go away. And I said to her, how do we get rid of them? What about if you go and have your photograph taken with them? And we were both very naive in those days and didn't realize this was not the way to get rid of photographers.
But she insisted on having 2 children with her from the nursery. And, of course, that was the picture where the sun came out halfway through the photographs and we saw her wonderful legs.
And I remember thinking, oh, dear, I think I've really blown this for her. And she took one look at it, went bright red, and put her hands up to her face in absolute horror.
How well are you coping with all the press attention? Well, as you can see, you can tell. Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you. Well, it is, naturally.
At lunchtime, on occasions, we needed something. And quite often, she would be the one to say, well, I'll go out and get it. I mean, never a question of, would you mind? Because we knew what she was going to come up against. But I think she quite enjoyed belting out of the school. And in fact, one of my favourite photographs is of her running flat out with something for lunch under her arm.
She loved the camera, and she seemed to enjoy the attention in a sort of flustered, blushing sort of way. She couldn't resist it. We couldn't resist her.
You said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
No final de 1980, quando Diana tinha 19 anos, a família Spencer estava animada com seu relacionamento com o príncipe de Gales.
I remember her father telling me that he was so thrilled that Prince Charles seemed to be so keen on Diana. But it wasn't really till after the New Year that we really knew it was going to, something was going to happen.
She swept everybody off their feet. I mean, all his friends and his family, all the people that he introduced, with 1 or 2 exceptions, the people he introduced Diana to thought she was sensational.
I thought that it was a match made in heaven. And I think most of us did. And I thought that the Prince of Wales would take Diana under his wing and teach her the ways of the royal family and the direction that she should follow. And I couldn't think of a better tutor.
Lady Diana.
Todas as manhãs, ao sair do apartamento, Diana se deparava com uma multidão de jornalistas.
Have you any comment to make about that? Lady Diana. No comment all round.
She'd even sit in the front seat of my car and read Private Eye. And Diana would hoot with laughter when she read some of that about Prince Philip kicking corgis up and down the corridor and stuff. She just thought it was great fun.
A revista satírica Private Eye ironizou o namoro de Charles e Diana. A revista também publicou matérias sobre a vida amorosa do príncipe Charles meses antes de tê-la conhecido. Uma delas contendo um ponto de interrogação quanto ao relacionamento anterior entre Charles e Camilla. Em outra, referiam-se a ela como sua confidente Camilla Parker Ball. A biografia autorizada do príncipe Charles sugere que ele tinha tido um caso com Camilla Parker Bowles meses antes de começar o namoro com Diana. Camilla e o marido Andrew estavam em Balmoral quando Diana foi vista pela primeira vez às margens do rio. Charles e Diana se encontraram 2 vezes em festas de fim de semana aqui na casa dos Parker Bowles.
Nossa! Uau! Parece um comichão de dentro para fora.
Olha só o que ele está fazendo. É muito bom.
Parece que tem umas mãozinhas no meu abdômen. Mas, eu sinto contrair aqui.
Está mesmo contraindo o meu abdômen, então eu não preciso fazer mais nada.
Basicamente, estou sentindo as contrações abdominais que eu sinto quando faço meus abdominais tradicionais, mas sem esforço.
Com certeza você pode ficar sentada no sofá assistindo TV e fazer isso sem derramar uma gota de suor.
Você está sem tempo para fazer exercícios? Está cansado daqueles vídeos que acabam sempre se repetindo? Cansado de todos os aparelhos que existem no mercado? Agora para você a maneira mais fácil de deixar seu corpo da maneira que você quer. O futuro da boa forma chegou. Apresentamos o fantástico Wavetronic System. Prepare-se para afirmar, tonificar e enrijecer os músculos superiores e inferiores do abdômen e eliminar os pneus sem sofrimento. O Wavetronic é o aparelho eletrônico dos seus sonhos que apresenta resultados imediatos, sem necessidade de exercícios demorados e cansativos. Você terá um abdômen bem definido, exatamente do jeito que você deseja e da maneira mais fácil possível. O Wavetronic System é seguro e fácil de usar. Você controla os 10 níveis de intensidade e tem uma variedade de 6 programas de exercícios à sua escolha. Depois assista maravilhado seus músculos se contraírem durante um abdominal. É isso mesmo, são seus músculos que se mexem e não você. O Wavetronic trabalha enquanto você vê TV, vai às compras, está no trabalho, em qualquer lugar, a qualquer hora. 10 minutos de Wavetronic são iguais a 600 exercícios abdominais. Você pode diminuir suas medidas na região do abdômen em menos de um mês. Poderá trabalhar os braços, o tórax, os glúteos e as coxas. Além disso, ele é totalmente sem fios e sem placas, podendo ser usado sob a roupa que ninguém nota. O Wavetronic não está à venda em lojas. Esta é uma oferta especial para a TV. Você só poderá adquiri-lo aqui e, portanto, pegue já o telefone, ligue para o número que está em sua tela e peça agora mesmo seu Wavetronic Fitness System.
Acho que tudo começou naquela festa de Natal. Estávamos um pouco bêbados. Eu não tinha ideia que ele gostava tanto assim de mim. Que a mulher dele e meu marido... Não posso acreditar que eles estivessem tendo um caso. Nós tínhamos o casamento perfeito. Até aquele dia.
Nenhum beijo é inocente. Nenhuma cicatriz é invisível. E nenhum casamento é perfeito. Ciúme doentio. Amanhã, em People and Arts.
Talvez tenha sido culpa minha.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I was looking for your scissors.
Nesta segunda e nos 10 mais, conheça os 10 espiões mais ousados. Os homens e mulheres responsáveis pelas mais perigosas transações de segredos de Estado. Os 10 espiões mais famosos. Nesta segunda, às 10 da noite, em People and Arts.
We have to do the maximum to make sure that the citizens can continue sleeping quietly tonight.
Dois povos, 2 horas mostrando o cotidiano de um conflito carregado de séculos de ódio, numa reportagem exclusiva da BBC. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arms.
Há momentos na vida em que a coisa mais importante do mundo é segurança. Visa em todos os momentos.
Charles e Diana já estavam namorando há vários meses, mas raramente ficavam sozinhos. Quase sempre se encontravam na casa de campo dos amigos mais íntimos de Charles.
Charles had a number of very trusted close friends in whose houses he knew he would be safe. He would be able to take Diana. There would be no question of press leaks. They would be safe.
Diana e Charles se hospedavam na casa de Andrew e Camilla Parker Bowles, e os dois casais iam juntos às corridas. Mais tarde, Diana declarou que passara tempo demais na companhia de Camilla.
I'd been staying with the Parker Bowleses an awful lot, and I couldn't understand why she kept saying to me, "Don't push him into this, don't do that." She knew so much about what he was doing privately and about what we were doing privately.
She would comment repeatedly about how hard he had to work, and she didn't like that because it meant that he didn't have much time to see her. He would be gone for long periods of time. They didn't have very many one-on-one dinners or romantic evenings. He was very busy. Certainly, yes, it was not dating as anybody would imagine it.
Charles escreveu para um amigo dizendo que ele se sentia confuso e ansioso quanto à sua intenção com Diana. Ele também escreveu:
It is just a matter of taking an unusual plunge into some rather unknown circumstances that inevitably disturbs me. But I expect it will be the right thing in the end. It all seems so ridiculous because I do very much want to do the right thing for this country and for my family. But I'm terrified sometimes of making a promise and then perhaps living to regret it.
Mas Diana tinha certeza de seus sentimentos.
There is no doubt in my mind that she thought he was the most wonderful thing on the face of the earth. And she said specifically that she would simply die if this didn't work out.
Diana came back to visit just before she got engaged. She burst into our sitting room and just beamed. And of course we said, "What are these rumours? Are they true about you and Prince Charles?" And the beam got bigger and bigger, and she just said, "I can't possibly say," and continued to beam for the rest of the afternoon.
Desde que era menina, Diana esperava ansiosamente por aquele momento.
We used to go for long walks across the estate. Diana used to say to me, "The only thing that I want is to be really happily married and to have lots of children." She said, "It's so sad to be on your own." She said, "I'm never going to be on my own," because she said, "My husband and I will always be together."
Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on. And I suppose in love.
Oh,
Whatever in love means.
Segundo Diana, não era a primeira vez que Charles dizia aquilo.
He said, "Will you marry me?" I said, "Yes, I love you so much. I love you so much." He said, "Whatever love means." He said it then.
Para proteger Diana da mídia, a família real providenciou um local seguro. Ela deixou os 2 empregos e o apartamento e se mudou para o Palácio de Buckingham, onde ganhou um apartamento, um segurança e uma criada. Mas Charles estava sempre viajando.
Diana, from the moment she was engaged, was rather cut off from reality. She was leaving all her friends behind, all the close contacts, all the people who she could have had little girly talks with or received strength from.
It's a tremendous change for someone, I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden.
It is, but I've had a small run out to it all in the last 6 months. And next to British Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me. British Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
Whatever in love means.
The prince went off to Australia and New Zealand after they were engaged because he had to go. The arrangements had already been made.
Quando Charles se preparava para partir, ele recebeu um telefonema.
The most awful thing had happened before he went. I was in his study talking to him when the telephone rang. It was Camilla, just before he was going for 5 weeks. I thought, shall I be nice, or shall I just sit here? So I thought I'd be nice, so I left them to it. It just broke my heart.
Logo depois, Diana foi filmada chorando no aeroporto. Durante a viagem de 6 semanas do príncipe Charles, Diana se dedicou aos preparativos do casamento. Mas certo dia, depois da volta de Charles, ela viu um presente no escritório de Michael Calbourne, secretário do príncipe. E mais tarde ela explicou o que tinha acontecido para o biógrafo real Anthony Holden.
Diana was looking over the wedding presents and saw one that she wasn't supposed to see, which was a bracelet with the initials G and F on it. And Camilla and Charles's nicknames for each other, or code names if you like, were Gladys and Fred. And Diana knew this from some flowers that Charles had sent Camilla when she was ill. So poor Colborne was in a very unenviable situation of having to explain to the princess-to-be that this was actually a present that Charles had ordered to give to Camilla as a sort of farewell, I'm getting married present.
Diana perguntou a Charles sobre o bracelete. Segundo fontes do palácio, Diana disse:
I asked Charles if he was still in love with Camilla Parker Bowles, and he didn't give me a clear answer. What am I to do?
De seus colegas nos disse:
My initial reaction was to panic. It was 10 days until the wedding. How do we get her down the aisle?
Na tentativa de apaziguar os ânimos, os amigos organizaram um almoço entre Diana e Camilla, num restaurante discreto em Londres, chamado Ménage à Trois. Fontes do palácio nos disseram que quando Diana voltou para o palácio, ela disse:
It was brilliant. We all understand each other.
Mais tarde, porém, Diana contou uma outra história.
She told me that Camilla asked her, would you be spending much time hunting? And Diana said, no, I don't like horses. I fell off one when I was a child. And she could see the look of relief on Camilla's face. She certainly believed that hunting and horses was going to be how Camilla would keep Charles.
A presença de Camila na vida de Charles, fosse ela amante, amiga ou simplesmente alguém que aceitava seus presentes, continuou incomodando Diana. Dias depois, Diana soube que Charles pretendia visitar Camila para dar-lhe o bracelete. Com menos de uma semana para o casamento, Diana foi ver Charles jogar polo. Ela começou a chorar. Os funcionários do palácio diziam que era nervosismo e cansaço. Antes de Diana chorar, Charles estava jogando para o time da Marinha Real. Do outro lado estava um jovem oficial do exército que desempenharia um papel importante na vida de Charles e Diana. Seu nome, James Hewitt.
I was playing in the match, and Prince Charles was playing for the Navy. I think the army lost by 1 goal. Actually, I fouled him before the end of the last chukker, which gave away a penalty, a 40-yard penalty, from which he was able to score. So it was my fault that they lost. He got the goal, and I said, well, there's your wedding present, sir.
Durante um tempo, James Hewitt ficaria afastado da vida do casal real. Com a aproximação do casamento, a ansiedade de Diana com respeito a Charles tinha altos e baixos. Ela perguntava aos amigos se Charles a amava de verdade. Constrangidos com a pergunta, eles mudavam de assunto. Um deles nos disse:
Lovely chap though he was, Charles gave no indication of thinking through what getting married to him would be like for Diana. He carried on with his merry ways, his extracurricular bachelor life. To her, it was a massively bigger thing.
Mas Diana e Charles realmente viveram momentos felizes durante o noivado. E Diana ficou contente ao voltar para o jardim de infância onde havia trabalhado antes.
We, I suspect, were the only people who had the bride-to-be at our royal wedding party. She was very happy and obviously very excited. She was looking wonderful.
Mas Diana, com apenas 20 anos, oscilava entre a euforia e o desespero.
I'm sure that Diana did have reservations about getting married at that stage because her father told me so. She said just before the wedding, I'm afraid I simply cannot go through with it. I can't go through with it.
When she expressed these reservations to anyone, such as her sister Sarah, they joked it off. Sarah told her, well, your face is on the tea towel, so it's too late to do anything now. Other people said to her, well, it's just simply pre-wedding nerves. You'll be all right once the day arrives.
Tá bem. E é o que você fez na camiseta? Tá caindo. É impossível tirar manchas de molho de tomate e graxa tudo junto, né? É, mas também você não deve conhecer nenhum ser humano capaz de arrumar tanta mancha ao mesmo tempo. Ainda bem que Ariel tem maridos ideais. Eles têm o poder de tirar manchas e do sabão em barra para tirar até as manchas mais difíceis. Escuta, vocês acreditam que exista algum ser humano capaz de aturar vocês? Ariel, o único com maridos ideais para lavar muito melhor.
A vida é como uma estrada, cheia de escolhas. E agora você pode escolher mais estilo, mais desempenho, mais controle, mais espaço. Novo Ford Fiesta, sua próxima grande escolha.
Existe um mundo misterioso onde se inventam, testam e vendem brinquedos.
Hello, my name's Allie.
onde se trabalha muito a sério para criar as novas febres e onde colecionar brinquedos não é para crianças. Dos mais antigos aos mais modernos, conheça o mundo secreto dos brinquedos. 2 de setembro, em People and Arts. Todas as quintas, abra o apetite com um episódio inédito da série Segredos de um Chefe de Cozinha. Jamie Oliver mostra sem inibições os segredos de um chefe de cozinha. Todas as quintas em O Mundo à la Carte, em People and Arts. Você está vendo o People and Arts. Memórias reprimidas, extraterrestres, guerras, medo da morte, do demônio e do desconhecido. A ignorância pode ser cômoda, mas a verdade é a chave para o poder. Os significados estão todos escondidos e o mundo está cheio de conspirações. Todas as quintas em People and Arts. Veja antes que seja censurado. Eles vão de país em país, buscando tratamentos de fertilidade em outras fronteiras, por causa de proibições ou restrições em seus países.
This treatment is not allowed, and it is against religion.
Não importa o quanto custe ou quais os riscos.
Life expectancy is extending a lot.
Quando se realmente quer ter um filho, a única saída é se tornar um dos turistas da fertilidade. Terça, 3 de setembro, em People and Arts.
Acho que o perigo, adrenalina.
Eu acho a profissão de bombeiro muito perigosa.
Eu acho o bombeiro sexy.
Salvar a vida.
Eu queria ser herói.
É um dever. É um encontro marcado sem data prevista. É um mundo de quem vive a prova de fogo. Novos episódios, todas as quartas, em People and Arts.
Do the maximum to make sure that the citizens can continue sleeping quietly tonight.
2 polos, 2 horas mostrando o cotidiano de um conflito carregado de séculos de ódio, numa reportagem exclusiva da BBC. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts.
Essa é uma galáxia não muito distante. Essa é a nossa casa. Mas por quanto tempo? Descubra como nasceu o nosso universo e para onde ele está indo.
Earth would start getting hotter and hotter. It looks like a train wreck, a cosmic train wreck. Black holes will shred you apart. There's no hope for survival.
Qual o destino da Terra e da vida sobre ela? Universo Exposto. 8 de setembro às 9 da noite no Discovery Channel.
Um raio-x dos casos criminosos mais surpreendentes. Um perfil dos seus protagonistas. Uma reconstrução passo a passo de como foram cometidos. Da ideia até sua realização. Estes são delitos que ninguém achava possível, até que alguém teve a coragem de executá-los. Golpes geniais. Em People and Arts.
O dia do casamento de Diana amanheceu claro e ensolarado, e milhões se perfilaram no trajeto até a Catedral de St. Paul.
She was extremely gentle, very shy, and she was someone that, as a young girl, you thought was everything a princess should be. Very beautiful, very young, very calm, and yet there was a certain nervousness about her. The feeling inside the cathedral, I remember, was just enormous. It's a very sort of hollow place, but it was filled with so many people and so much warmth.
The thing I remember the most about the wedding, funnily enough, was
not only the atmosphere inside, but also hearing the noises from outside.
Daria o troféu para os vencedores, liderados por James Hewitt.
I don't think she could speak, other than saying, well done. I think she was about to get the giggles. She didn't really say very much to me at all. But I mean, you know, she looked at me and I looked at her and we didn't really need to say anything. So I said thank you very much and walked back as quickly as I could. It's a lovely, lovely day.
Mas não seria assim por muito tempo. O relacionamento entre Diana e James Hewitt logo sofreria uma enorme pressão.
Sabe quando eu vou poder comprar um carro assim? No dia de São Nunca.
São Nunca?
É, o dia chegou.
Toda a linha Ford com IPI reduzido. Aproveite. Ford Ka com taxa de 0,5% ao mês. Ford Focus Sedan por R$ 32.990. Ford Ranger por R$ 51.120. Promoção dia de São Nunca. Preços como você nunca viu.
Querido, e se for uma menina?
Há momentos na vida em que a coisa mais importante do mundo é realizar um sonho. Visa em todos os momentos.
We have to do the maximum to make sure that the citizens can continue sleeping quietly tonight.
Dois povos, 2 horas mostrando o cotidiano de um conflito carregado de séculos de ódio. Numa reportagem exclusiva da BBC. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts. Você está vendo People and Arts. Um beijo. O encontro de 2 olhares. O início de um amor. E de uma vida a 2. E depois, que maior felicidade e desafio na vida do que receber a notícia de que um bebê está vindo. Todas as tardes, em People and Arts, seu coração vai bater mais forte. Álbum de casamento e história de um bebê. De segunda a sexta, em People and Arts. Quem entra neste pronto-socorro tem apenas um desejo: não morrer. Aqueles que aqui trabalham fazem de tudo por aqueles que chegam. O tempo vai se esgotando e as dificuldades crescendo. O momento é agora ou nunca. Estado crítico, todas as quartas, em People and Arts.
Ce sont les choses qui, là, t'as mes coisas à la vida.
O que interessa para ele é a música. Não importa a raça, a língua, o país, as raízes.
For me, it's all just music that I love, that I'm passionate about.
As misturas sonoras estão em toda parte e David Byrne está sempre em busca de músicos que não têm medo de arriscar. Conheça o homem por trás destes excêntricos experimentos. David Byrne, em busca de novos ritmos. Amanhã, em People and Arts. Como?
Um tipo de atadura.
Quando?
À meia-noite.
Por quê?
Você mentiu para mim.
Quem? Nesta nova temporada, Sam vai se deparar com os casos mais arrepiantes que você pode imaginar. E não vai parar de investigar até encontrar todas as respostas. Não perca nenhum episódio de Testemunha Silenciosa. Todas as sextas, em People and Arts.
Eu acho que todos nós, no mundo hoje, tentamos, assim, iniciamos o milênio pedindo paz.
As escrituras védicas dizem que um planeta do tipo a Terra, ele desaparece por 2 razões. Ou porque todos os seres humanos se tornaram bons, ou porque todos os seres humanos se tornaram maus. Outro dia em São Paulo me perguntavam por que eu vinha fazer o Rock in Rio, já que os cachês eram tão baixos e que tantos jovens tinham se indisposto contra o festival e tal. E eu respondeu, eu estou indo lá por um mundo melhor. Por um mundo melhor, mas o que você vai fazer lá para melhorar o mundo? Nada, eu só vou afirmar lá que eu sou daqueles que quero que a Terra desapareça quando todos estiverem bons.
Eu continuo tendo uma esperança enorme que, de algum jeito, a gente amenize a violência, em todos os sentidos eu estou falando, né? Então, se a gente está falando de paz, a gente está falando de uma busca, de uma luta contra a violência, né? O desrespeito, o racismo, a exclusão social. Então, eu não acho que isso seja uma utopia.
Nesta terça, em O Mundo à la Carte, sua cozinha vai ganhar um ar mediterrâneo graças a Floyd. E depois conheça os segredos de um chefe de cozinha com Jamie Oliver. Nesta terça, em O Mundo à la Carte, People and Arts.
O romance de Diana era um segredo guardado por todos. Um amigo antigo nos disse:
When I joined royal service, I was quietly told that Charles and Diana had both found love with new partners. There was a great deal of pleasure taken in this in the palace.
I suppose it was quite weird being at Highgrove. It was far harder to relax there, of course, than, for example, in Devon, because there were staff there, and with all that entails. Those who work there, you know, kept very much in the background. I suppose, other than when you walked around the gardens and the security camera follows you. But inside the house, a little more relaxed. Diana told me that she had discussed our relationship with her husband. It was a tacit understanding between Diana and Charles, and that I was a part of her life in the same way that Mrs. Parker Bowles was a part of Prince Charles's life. Not only that, suggesting that it was understood by those who are in political authority and over us, and security, and the household, the royal household.
Aristocratic, well-bred families have, when their own marriage has staled, or they've grown bored with one another, or it hasn't worked out, for whatever reason, they traditionally have not divorced, but they have pursued relationships elsewhere and remained together for the sake, in aristocratic families, for the estates and the inheritance, and for the children.
I know that at certain stages she wanted to reconcile her marriage and to try and get Charles to love her. I know that. You know, I didn't relish in it, but I would have been fine. I mean, it would have been, you know... had she gone back to him, I think that would have been a good thing, if it had lasted. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Os amigos de Charles e Diana começaram a fazer comentários.
At the time, and this was about 1987, 1988, I was aware that there was a lot of briefing against Diana. That, you know, she was unstable, she was difficult, she was awkward.
The briefings from Charles's friends would come very often at polo matches when he would be playing, you'd be on the sidelines, and
the subject would come up of the marriage and suggestions that it wasn't going very well. And then the friend would say, well, of course, she can be a very difficult woman, can't she? And so subtly, or perhaps unsubtly at times, they planted the seed that Diana was the one to blame.
Após 8 anos de casamento, Diana viajou para o exterior desacompanhada pela primeira vez. Durante a visita de 3 dias a Nova York, a fim de angariar fundos para as artes e aumentar as exportações da Grã-Bretanha, ela também pediu para visitar instituições beneficentes da cidade. O escritório particular de Diana procurou o abrigo do sem-teto da Henry Street, no leste de Nova York, mas os funcionários já desconfiavam da visita de celebridades.
I feel like the princess might be on a guilt trip, like not really concerned about our people, but more like, well, it'll be in the newspaper on the society page that Princess Diana came to see a homeless shelter, rather than really having an impact on what's happening to poor people.
A visita de Diana a Nova York foi organizada pelo novo secretário particular, Patrick Jefferson.
Royalty very often is theatre. My job was to make sure that she appeared in a way which brought most credit to the organization that she was representing or visiting. She was very pragmatic, rather perhaps like a politician in that way. She knew the raw power of the media, almost instinctively.
And they opened the door, and this very tall, thin woman got out, and she reached for my hand, and she's shaking my hand, and she's, oh, hi, and she's, so then I'm like, whoa. So these are all split-second kinds of things, but then before I could get nervous, then she says, hey, we're wearing the same colors. Then for me, it was like, this woman is real. And the princess, she had a way of kind of looking down when she speaks. So you kind of got to look up at her, and she's tall too, so we were kind of looking up, and I saw Shirley kind of looking like, uh-oh, Shirley. Finally, Shirley said, ooh, but you so pretty. And that's when everybody rolled. We were like, uh-oh.
And I just burst out. I said something like, listen, I just got to say it. I don't know if I should say it or not, but oh my God, your skin is so beautiful. And then everybody started laughing because it was, it was like everybody being so polite, so, and she was just so human. I think Frances dropped a button.
One of the buttons popped off and she beat me to it, picked it right up, and she said to me, we have to keep up with these little things. So it was like really nice. And then her conversation was, it was just genuine. She wasn't just asking questions, she was there with us.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
So by now, we're like old buddies.
Oh, you look beautiful.
People were crowded all around. There was a kid with some tulips. And she just broke away from security from where we were and went over to that kid, and she started shaking hands with everybody on the behind the barricade. And again, it was like, wow, just look at her.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Alguns não encaravam o trabalho assistencial de Diana com a mesma simpatia e diziam que ela estava mais interessada nas manchetes do que em ajudar os carentes.
I've studied a number of celebrities, reprobate politicians and others who've gone the charity route to enhance their reputations or to try and recover them. Over the even medium run, it's indissolubly related to cynicism.
Patrick Jefferson, que estava com Diana em Henry Street, também questionou seus motivos para fazer visitas como aquela.
The compassion she showed at the time was quite genuine. So the motives that brought her to that place might be less than entirely compassionate. But while she was there doing the job, I was never in any doubt that her compassion was genuine.
She talked to a child. She didn't just talk to the kid. She saw his shoes was untied, just being a natural, and just tied his shoes. Went to the family school, was down there with the kid. You would think of a princess. You would, like, I don't want to compare, but, stuck up in the nose or whatever, but she wasn't like that at all. because, like I said, she's still here. A piece of her. She left that here.
A visita de Diana a Nova York foi um dos ápices de sua vida pública, mas em questão de meses, a felicidade particular começou a desmoronar. No outono de 1989, o exército britânico concedeu um novo cargo a James Hewitt, na Alemanha.
She said, "Do you have to go?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do have to go to Germany. There is no way around it. Can I speak to Colonel Michael?" Or, he said, "Well, yes, but it's going to appear to be very strange, and they're not going to send me because I'm your riding instructor." She was tearful and made me feel as though I didn't care. But of course I did. Well, I cared, but I couldn't really do much about it. I didn't know what to do. The idea of being in Germany wasn't as horrific as it may first appear, because, let's face it, it wasn't as though we were living together. We were seeing each other 2-3 times a week, perhaps once a week, and that pattern could have continued in Germany.
Mas as visitas prometidas foram poucas e espaçadas.
I flew out one weekend to be with him. He gave me a lovely weekend. We had a super time, and I think I might have had an inkling then that things perhaps were cooling it a bit.
After a while, it just sort of petered out, and I think she felt that I let her down badly by doing that, and I think she needed someone around her, and I wasn't there to be around her.
O príncipe Charles retomou definitivamente o relacionamento com Camilla Parker Bowles e Diana ficou novamente sozinha. Seu próximo relacionamento iniciaria uma guerra entre ela e o marido e uma crise que acabaria colocando a família real à prova. Versão brasileira, Clone.
Você está vendo People and Arts. Este segmento foi apresentado por Embratel. Com a Embratel você pode.
Essa é uma galáxia não muito distante. Essa é a nossa casa. Mas por quanto tempo? Descubra como nasceu o nosso universo e para onde ele está indo.
Earth would start getting hotter and hotter. It looks like a train wreck, a cosmic train wreck. Black holes will shred you apart. There's no hope for survival.
Qual o destino da Terra e da vida sobre ela? Universo Exposto. 8 de setembro às 9 da noite no Discovery Channel.
No final da década de 80, 9 anos após o casamento, a princesa Diana e o príncipe Charles viviam separadamente. Ele passava a maior parte do tempo com Camilla Parker Bowles. Ela havia terminado um relacionamento amoroso de 3 anos com o oficial do exército James Hewitt. Somente um pequeno grupo de pessoas sabia do fim do casamento real. Durante anos, eles haviam mantido segredo, mas os detalhes logo seriam publicados nos jornais, abalando a estabilidade da família real.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
Diana. A história de uma princesa. A separação. Diana era uma mulher solteira com nome de casada. Seus dias eram preenchidos com compromissos reais, geralmente longe do marido. No outono de 1989, ela iniciou um novo relacionamento. Em questão de semanas, o fato chegou ao conhecimento do tabloide The Sun. Um homem queria vender uma fita com uma conversa gravada. O editor adjunto marcou um encontro em um estacionamento.
He came and sat in our car. We put the cassette in and listened to it, almost mesmerized for 20 minutes or so.
It's just so difficult, so complicated. It makes my life real torture.
To my view, it was clearly her. We had no idea who the man was, and the content was absolutely explosive.
Sad, I thought empty. I thought, bloody hell, what have I done for this family?
Eventually, we managed to pin down that the man who was constantly referred to as James on the tape was James Gilby.
You're just the nicest person I know in the world. You're just the nicest person.
James Gilby, da família do Jim Gilby, havia sido um dos namorados de Diana na adolescência.
We went to his house early one morning and told him, we've got a tape which we believe contains private conversation between you and the Princess of Wales, in which you repeatedly call her Squidgy, and it's a fairly intimate conversation, at which point he went completely white, got in his car and drove off.
O jornal The Sun considerou a história explosiva demais para ser publicada e guardou a fita em um cofre. Mas Diana ficou sabendo da fita e viu que sua imagem pública poderia ficar comprometida. Ela e Gilby pararam de se falar e ela voltou a ter contato com James Hewitt, que comandava um esquadrão de tanques. Ele acabava de ser enviado para o Golfo, onde estava começando uma guerra.
I was in Germany, and she suddenly rang me out of the blue. She was wondering whether I was going to the Gulf, and so I said yes, I was. And she said she'd like to see me before I went out there. So I went and saw her at Highgrove, and I stayed the night there. So we took up really where we left off, without an if and a but. And then this amazing affair was rekindled, really.
Diana também voltou a ter contato com a família de James Hewitt.
I hadn't seen him for several months, and as he was coming back to be at Highgrove with Diana, she said, well, let's have Mother up. And we had a wonderful weekend. It was so nice to be with them. And the boys appeared in their pajamas and their dressing gowns, and William actually brought supper in on the tray for us.
A família Hewitt sabia que Diana tinha tomado uma decisão importante.
I know that Diana did not want to be Queen of England. I will never be Queen. She was quite determined. You know, she wanted to get out of the marriage. So for that reason alone, you know, she had no desire to be Queen.
Diana começou a planejar o fim do casamento. O primeiro passo se referia ao dinheiro.
I was introduced to Princess Diana in 1990 by one of her close friends who I'd done very well for financially. And she said she wanted me to look after her financial affairs. She wanted to leave the royal family. She wanted to leave their advisors. She wanted to set up on her own. She was thinking of possibly remarrying, moving abroad, maybe having a couple of children. She wanted to have a new life.
When I went to the desert, the affair was conducted with ferocity, if you like. The nature of the ferocity was the amount of correspondence and feeling that was being transferred between us. She wrote to me every day I was out there, sometimes twice a day.
A mãe de James Hewitt era quem enviava suas cartas para Diana.
On one occasion, she I don't know why, there's probably been a hold-up with the mail. I think she probably hadn't heard for a couple of days. And she rang me, and I said, yes, I said, letters came this morning. Oh, please, will you read it to me? Will you read them to me? I said, I can't do that. I can't. They're your letters. Please. She pleaded with me to read these letters, and so I duly opened them and read them to her. And she was happy, and she said, now please, will you post them today? I said, of course I will.
She sent me bottles of whiskey and hampers from Fortnum and Mason, which was well received and shared amongst my men. And she sent out a parcel of Playboy magazines. They were hugely appreciated.
Durante esse período, apesar das preocupações, Diana manteve as aparências. Na ida a um hospital de Nottingham, ela encontrou a família de Dean Woodward, que estava em coma.
Dean's mum said, well, my son's in intensive care, and Diana said, do you mind if I come in? And Dean's mum says, no, not at all. And yeah, you say, I was in a state of shock anyway myself. When she walked in, I was like, oh my God.
How can you feel? Why would somebody like that come to see somebody like me? She come to see Joe Public.
Assim que Jimmy Woodward recobrou a consciência, ele teve uma surpresa.
The receptionist came out and she said, Dean, there's a phone call for you. I said, who is it? She said, it's Diane. And I've got a sister, Diane. And I said, oh, tell her I'm having my dinner to call back later. She went away, come back. She said, oh, she can't call back. So I went and stopped my dinner, went and spoke on the phone. And then I said, oh, hello, my duck, I had a tracheotomy, I could talk then. And then she said, do you know who you're talking to? I said, yeah, Diane. And she said, no, you're talking to Princess Diana from Kensington Palace. Unbelievable.
Alguns eventos podem mudar o mundo para sempre. Em setembro, um ano depois dos atentados em Nova York, People and Arts lembra a data com 2 programas marcantes. Você vai conhecer a cara do mal, a logística de uma grande conspiração e entrar no coração de quem ainda não se consolou. Em setembro, em People and Arts, faça a conexão com aqueles que viram de perto o mundo mudar. Bem mais perto que você.
Todos os sábados. Não dije que ia tirar dieta, lo hice. Você tem 2 horas seguidas, cara a cara com aquelas pessoas que sempre nos intrigaram.
Amor.
Você vai ficar sabendo dos seus segredos.
Debes tener miles de espías, Juan Manuel Serrano.
E com certeza vai vê-los depois com outros olhos.
Teatro dos Pecados era considerado o pior.
Então já sabe, todos os sábados, 2 horas para conhecer de perto a vida das pessoas mais fascinantes. Em People and Arts. Vidas é apresentado por Embratel. Com a Embratel você pode.
Eu acho que tudo começou naquela festa de Natal. Estávamos um pouco bêbados. Eu não tinha ideia que ele gostava tanto assim de mim. Porque a mulher dele, meu marido... Não posso acreditar que eles estivessem tendo um caso. Nós tínhamos o casamento perfeito. Até aquele dia.
Nenhum beijo é inocente, nenhuma cicatriz é invisível e nenhum casamento é perfeito. Ciúme doentio. Amanhã, em People and Arts.
Talvez tenha sido culpa minha.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I was looking for your scissors.
Você está vendo o People and Arts.
Memórias reprimidas, extraterrestres, guerras, medo da morte, do demônio e do desconhecido. A ignorância pode ser cômoda, mas a verdade é a chave para o poder. Os significados estão todos escondidos e o mundo está cheio de conspirações. Todas as quintas em People and Arts. Veja antes que seja censurado.
I said.
Entre no coração e na mente daqueles que vêm lutando nesta terra coberta de sangue. 2 povos, 2 pontos de vista. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts.
Em fevereiro de 1991, James Hewitt liderou 15 tanques britânicos para a batalha. Pela bravura e coragem, ele foi mencionado nos despachos sobre a guerra. Também foi citado nos noticiários do mundo.
The first I knew about it was, somebody handing it to me and saying, look at this. And so, oh my goodness.
Esses foram os primeiros detalhes da vida amorosa de Diana a serem publicados em um jornal britânico, apesar do jornal apenas sugerir a seriedade do relacionamento com Hewitt.
I used the army phone to ring her up. She said, don't worry. I said, don't worry. I mean, it's easier said than done. As soon as I got back, I went and saw her, went and stayed. And we didn't really sort of speak too much about it. There was too much else to catch up on.
Depois do maior furo de reportagem do mundo, os jornalistas seguiam cada passo de Hewitt. Tornou-se impossível ter privacidade com Diana.
Publicity killed the relationship. It was impossible to carry on as we had been in that environment. I tried to contact her, and then, as soon as I realized my calls weren't being returned, I knew, I'd been there before, so it was plain to see.
Diana corria o risco de ver 2 histórias comprometedoras sendo publicadas. Mais detalhes sobre o caso com Hewitt e a fita da conversa com James Gilby. Ela se adiantou contando ao mundo uma história diferente e tornando pública a sua versão do casamento.
She planned it, but she wanted to look as if she was the goodie and the royal family were the baddies.
Diana estava ansiosa para contar ao mundo sua história antes que surgissem outras manchetes sobre sua vida amorosa. Foi então que ela procurou um jornalista com quem mantinha um bom relacionamento.
I vividly remember the first time Diana and Andrew Morton met. It was at a cocktail party, I think in Spain or somewhere like that. And Diana immediately seemed to be interested in him. She was toying with his tie and making comments about what a bright pattern it was. From then on, Andrew always wore loudly patterned ties.
At these receptions, it was all lively, joshing, and very friendly.
But it gave her an excuse to get close to him. She picked up his tie and pulled him towards her, and we were all standing back, amazed, gobsmacked. And the press officer, who was standing nearby, said, God, I think I'll have to get a bucket of water and throw over them.
Em 1991, os jornais britânicos publicaram artigos de Andrew Morton sobre o casamento de Diana. Eles continham fortes insinuações quanto a Charles e Camilla com fontes confiáveis de informação.
For the first time, Diana had a voice, and trust was beginning to be built up between myself, Diana's circle, and, obliquely, Diana herself.
Morton fez amizade com um dos orientadores mais próximos de Diana, o Dr. James Coldhurst. Na primavera de 1991, Coldhurst convidou Morton para tomar o café da manhã.
Over a plate of bacon and eggs in a transport cafe in North Ruislip in North London, well away from prying eyes. We just chatted about Diana's life.
Morton já escrevia sobre Diana há alguns anos, mas Coldhurst contou-lhe detalhes que nenhum jornalista tinha conhecimento.
How she would run out of the room when Prince Charles arrived in the room. How she was in a bad way, mentally. And of course, the thing which really riled her most of all was that she was living a lie in terms of her marriage. And some of her friends really felt that she was on the verge of committing suicide. I remember thinking to myself, this is Walter Mitty land.
Morton já pretendia escrever um livro sobre Diana. Ele e Coldhurst discutiram sobre a possibilidade de uma entrevista. Era uma ideia arriscada. Diana gostou, mas ficou relutante. Assim, Coldhurst sugeriu que ela consultasse um amigo dele.
James Coldhurst, who's a good friend of mine, at the time approached me out of the blue and said, how do you fancy doing an astrological reading for Diana? And I looked at him and I thought, you're winding me up, aren't you? But no, he meant it.
Uma tarde, Diana foi à casa de James Coldhurst para a primeira de duas consultas com Felix Lyle.
Diana was thinking about doing a book. There were doubts. She had serious worries and reservations about it. We talked about the possibilities and the mudslinging that would come out as a result of it. She asked me, well, what do you think? What are the auguries? I said, well, there's scandal here. Neptune was playing devious game, and also Pluto was playing a very strong role, and so there was complete transformation. In a way, she felt, well, if this is what's happening anyhow, I might as well facilitate it. And we smiled and said, well, that's it then. The book is going ahead.
If she'd come to somebody like me or others and said, do you think we should do this? Do you think this is a good idea? We would have all said no. Or I would have done anyway, and that was not what she wanted to hear.
Andrew Morton enviou questionário para Diana, que ela respondeu durante suas noites solitárias, gravando as respostas em uma fita. Era sua versão do casamento infeliz. Ela acusou a família real de se incomodar com sua popularidade.
There was immense jealousy because every single day I was on the front of the newspapers.
Ela disse que passava horas sozinha imaginando onde o marido poderia estar, provocando depressão e bulimia.
I had so many dreams as a young girl that my husband would look after me, encourage me, but I didn't get any of that.
Ela acusou o príncipe Charles de abandoná-la, reatando com Camilla Parker Ball.
The worst day of my life, realizing that Charles had gone back to Camilla.
Nenhum escritor da família real tinha recebido informações semelhantes. Um ataque ao caráter do futuro rei feito pela futura rainha. A cada 2 ou 3 dias, Coldhurst entregava as fitas para Morton e voltava com uma nova lista de perguntas.
He said, I got the whole thing rolling. The whole thing was rolling. The information was being gathered. She gave a lot. James was the centerpiece. He was the linchpin for the whole thing. I mean, it was a very slick operation because Morton never had to meet her.
Gravar fitas para Andrew Morton não foi a única atividade mundana de Diana.
And a car pulled up, and that's when it hit me. I thought, God, she's really coming to the house.
And I looked out the window and I could see her get out of a Jaguar. I think she had XJs. And she come down the drive, and then she came in with her arms open. Gave my mum a hug, and hello, Ivy, first name terms. Hello, Ivy, hello, John, to my dad. And then she said, oh, I'm sorry I'm late.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late, we got awfully long.
Hello, James.
And she says to Dean, oh, it's nice to see you now you've got your clothes on. So we all had a laugh about that. She broke the ice. She didn't make you feel uncomfortable or anything. She'd been there half an hour, and outside the street was becoming crowded. You know, word had got round.
She was shocked to see that, because she didn't come for that. She came for me and my family. Not papers, not cameras, not public. I wasn't interested in the royals, but ever since Princess Diana did what she did for me and my family, I've not been a royalist, but I'm definitely close #1 Dianaist if there was a Dianaist. Definitely.
Logo, os fãs de Diana compraram o jornal Sunday Times, que, em junho de 1992, publicou vários trechos do livro de Andrew Morton. Os defensores da família real fizeram o contra-ataque.
I think the public have been outraged by the intrusive nature of the authors and the journalists concerned.
Andrew Morton sabia que estava sozinho. Diana se recusava a ajudá-lo.
She had total, utter deniability. So that I would take the flak for it, it would be my responsibility. Some of her friends would bear the burden of it as well, and that was it. And she could then say to the Queen, say to Prince Charles, say to the Prime Minister, nothing to do with me.
Os oficiais do palácio comunicaram à imprensa e o governo que Diana negava tudo. O livro de Morton não tardou para ser desmentido. Max Hastings, editor do Daily Telegraph, não acreditava em uma só palavra.
Now we're dealing here with a book by somebody called Andrew Morton, whose only credentials is that he was a royal reporter. Now I'm bound to say that royal reporters, if you can't get a job as a pianist in a brothel, you become a royal reporter.
Com o livro sendo ridicularizado, Diana resolveu defendê-lo publicamente. Ela visitou uma pessoa que havia auxiliado Andrew Morton, Caroline Bartholomew, e alguém avisou os jornais.
I got a phone call saying the Princess of Wales is at Caroline's house. Caroline, one of her flatmates. So I shot round there. The door opened up, sharp on 9 o'clock. Diana stepped out, looked up at me, kissed Caroline on both cheeks, kissed the baby, and kissed Caroline's husband. Looked up to see if I was shooting, walked to the car, and looked at me all the way up the street as she drove towards me, giving me full chance to get more photographs.
The reason was very simple, to show the world that Diana gave support to those friends who stuck their neck out to speak to me.
It was significant that whoever told me was able to tell me when the Princess of Wales was leaving. Lots of people know when somebody's arriving someplace. It's very difficult to guess when somebody's leaving. Well, I only know who phoned me. And I'm not telling you.
Foi um momento marcante na vida de Diana. Ela estava endossando publicamente uma crítica ao príncipe de Gales. Estava violando a regra mais básica da monarquia.
One of the things that really has made the royal family work over so many years is the discretion and the fact that their friends, they never talk to the media, and their friends never talk to them, and they are surrounded by this complete wall of loyalty and trust. And to have one of their own members with a regular hotline to Andrew Morton or whoever it was absolutely devastating for them.
No livro que ela tinha lido antes da publicação e aprovado, Diana retratava o príncipe Charles como um homem preguiçoso e egoísta, que preferia jogar polo a ficar com os filhos.
It had spite built into it, and I think in some way it satisfied her need for revenge. Part of me felt a little bit ashamed of that, actually, and I just felt that maybe I should have rethought my strategy originally.
Quando os amigos do príncipe Charles perceberam que não podiam alegar que Morton estava mal informado, eles resolveram contestar cada detalhe do livro. Muitos entraram em contato com a escritora Penny Junor.
I think Morton's book is 100% credible as Diana's version of her story. I think it is 50%, maybe 99% inaccurate in terms of what actually happened.
Mais tarde, Diana desmentiu algumas partes da história que havia contado para Andrew Morton. Uma delas foi o relato de Diana sobre o que tinha acontecido em Sandringham, quando ela estava no 3º mês de gravidez do príncipe William.
Standing at the top of the wooden staircase, she hurled herself to the ground, landing in a heap at the bottom.
There was a part in the book about her trying to commit suicide, but she told me that she'd merely slipped and fallen down the stairs, and there was no suicide attempt at all. I'm sure of that.
Diana havia dado o primeiro golpe em uma guerra de exageros e rancor, mas logo a situação fugiria ao controle.
Oh, nossa! Uau! Parece um comichão de dentro para fora.
Olha só o que ele está fazendo.
É muito bom.
Parece que tem umas mãozinhas no meu abdômen. Mas, eu sinto contrair aqui.
Está mesmo contraindo o meu abdômen, então eu não preciso fazer mais nada.
Basicamente, estou sentindo as contrações abdominais que eu sinto quando faço meus abdominais tradicionais, mas sem esforço.
Com certeza você pode ficar sentada no sofá assistindo TV e fazer isso sem derramar uma gota de suor.
Você está sem tempo para fazer exercícios? Está cansado daqueles vídeos que acabam sempre se repetindo? Cansado de todos os aparelhos que existem no mercado? Agora para você a maneira mais fácil de deixar seu corpo da maneira que você quer. O futuro da boa forma chegou. Apresentamos o fantástico Wavetronic System. Prepare-se para afirmar, tonificar e enrijecer os músculos superiores e inferiores do abdômen e eliminar os pneus sem sofrimento. O Wavetronic é o aparelho eletrônico dos seus sonhos que apresenta resultados imediatos, sem necessidade de exercícios demorados e cansativos. Você terá um abdômen bem definido, exatamente do jeito que você deseja e da maneira mais fácil possível. O Wavetronic System é seguro e fácil de usar. Você controla os 10 níveis de intensidade e tem uma variedade de 6 programas de exercícios à sua escolha. Depois assista maravilhado seus músculos se contraírem durante um abdominal. É isso mesmo, são seus músculos que se mexem e não você. O Wavetronic trabalha enquanto você vê TV, vai às compras, está no trabalho, em qualquer lugar, a qualquer hora. 10 minutos de Wavetronic são iguais a 600 exercícios abdominais. Você pode diminuir suas medidas na região do abdômen em menos de um mês. Poderá trabalhar os braços, o tórax, os glúteos e as coxas. Além disso, ele é totalmente sem fios e sem placas, podendo ser usado sob a roupa que ninguém nota. O Wavetronic não está à venda em lojas. Esta é uma oferta especial para a TV. Você só poderá adquiri-lo aqui e, portanto, pegue já o telefone, ligue para o número que está em sua tela e peça agora mesmo seu Wavetronic Fitness System.
Nesta segunda e nos 10 mais, conheça os 10 espiões mais ousados. Os homens e mulheres responsáveis pelas mais perigosas transações de segredos de Estado. Os 10 espiões mais famosos. Nesta segunda, às 10 da noite, em People and Arts. Eles vão de país em país, buscando tratamentos de fertilidade em outras fronteiras, por causa de proibições ou restrições em seus países.
This treatment is not allowed, and it is against religion.
Não importa o quanto custe ou quais os riscos.
Life expectancy is extending a lot.
Quando se realmente quer ter um filho, a única saída é se tornar um dos turistas da fertilidade. Terça, 3 de setembro, em People and Arts. Você está vendo o People and Arts.
Sabe quando eu vou poder comprar um carro assim? No dia de São Nunca.
São Nunca?
É, o dia chegou.
Toda a linha Ford com IPI reduzido. Aproveite. Ford Ka com taxa de 0,5% ao mês. Ford Focus Sedan por R$ 32.990. Ford Ranger por R$ 51.120. Promoção Dia de São Nunca. Preços como você nunca viu.
Acho que o perigo, adrenalina.
Eu acho a profissão de bombeiro muito perigosa.
Eu acho o bombeiro sexy.
Salvar a vida.
Eu queria ser herói.
É um dever. É um encontro marcado sem data prevista. É um mundo de quem vive a prova de fogo. Novos episódios, todas as quartas, em People and Arts.
Enquanto Diana e Charles trocavam ofensas mútuas através da imprensa, seus defensores tentavam descobrir que repercussão isso teria. Camilla Parker Bowles falava regularmente com o jornal The Sun.
In hindsight, she got as much from me as I got from her, because every time I called her, I would tell her, well, you know, we've heard this, and this is incredible. And she would say, no, I've not heard that. And then she would say, well, it's totally untrue. And of course, everything was totally untrue. They were very aware of the rumours that the media had hold of. and really what newspapers were contemplating publishing about the marriage.
Em agosto de 1992, já que todos sabiam dos problemas que o casamento de Diana enfrentava, o jornal The Sun resolveu publicar a conversa gravada com James Gilby. Elas foram chamadas de fitas secretas.
It's just so difficult, so complicated. It makes my life real torture.
Apart from some of the material at the beginning of the tape, which we thought was rather tasteless and offensive, we published every word and put it on a 089 number for people to listen to as well.
Diana tinha gravado sua história para Andrew Morton, em parte para limitar os danos que a conversa com Gilby lhe causariam. E ela conseguiu. Na pesquisa de opinião, seu índice de popularidade continuava alto. A rainha pressionou o casal a fazer um último sacrifício. Mas durante a viagem oficial para a Coreia, formavam um casal melancólico. Na volta, tudo estaria acabado.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that, with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses have no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected.
Entre os amigos de Charles e Diana, a divisão era total.
You were either in one camp or you were in the other. You couldn't really be in both. I can think of very few examples of those who were in both. And the tendency clearly was to drive the two people at the very center of the drama apart.
Nas mesas de jantar mais elegantes de Londres, iniciava-se uma guerra social. Lord Palumbo tinha sido amigo de Charles desde que o príncipe tinha 16 anos, mas naquele momento ele apoiava a princesa.
Oh, the warfare is total in such circumstances. The warfare is very nasty. And very deep and very bitter.
In public terms, there was supposed to be a dignified silence, but quite clearly the friends that the Prince had were very influential, had good contacts with the media. They took the opportunity to say that this was the Princess's fault. When I was told one day that the Princess is clinically mad and needs treatment.
The Princess was unbalanced, the Princess was this, the Princess was that, she was unstable, she was bulimic, she was so on and so forth. And similarly damaging things about the Prince of Wales and his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles.
Depois que o livro de Andrew Morton foi publicado, os jornais revelaram mais detalhes sobre o caso do príncipe Charles. Os amigos do príncipe negaram tudo para a imprensa.
They are very close, but are nothing other than very good friends. It is Diana's obsession that makes it sound otherwise.
Mas foi então que um homem de Chester ligou para o Daily Mirror. Ele também tinha uma fita.
I can't bear a Sunday night without you. I need you several times a week. So do I. I need you all the week. All the time.
Os trechos publicados da fita provaram que a desconfiança de Diana quanto a Camila não era apenas uma obsessão.
Then you realize that actually Diana, far from being potty, her suspicions were absolutely correct, and that they had been arranging these meetings. They had been at friends, but people that she considered to be friends of her and Charles, who were playing a double game.
Problems in life of her own, and has courageously used this experience.
Diana tornou-se símbolo da mulher usada que superou o desespero e começou a reagir. Ela atuou em grupos de apoio às mulheres, fazendo discursos que abordavam sua experiência pessoal.
As their world closes in on them, their self-esteem evaporates into a haze of loneliness and desperation as they retreat further and further from those who could help them.
O mundo também ficou do lado de Diana. Suas aparições solitárias atraíam mais atenção do que aquelas de seus parentes reais.
She was incredibly charismatic. I defy anybody to say they have met her and not been bowled over by the charisma that she just oozed.
Apesar de Diana ter ficado parcialmente desvinculada da família real, ela era bem recebida pelos líderes mundiais e encantava o mundo dos negócios.
There was one particular case where a multinational whom I'd been trying to court for 6 years and not been very successful suddenly decided they'd like to support us. So She really had the ability to attract ordinary people, people who were in positions of authority, and the media, and that combination was dynamite for a charity.
Diana foi várias vezes a Nova York, sua nova cidade preferida, onde era idolatrada pela alta sociedade. As revistas sofisticadas a adoravam.
For Vanity Fair, Diana was, it's an icon of a period in time, an international symbol, the likes of which you get, maybe 3 or 4 times a century. Nobody knows anything about who does or doesn't sell, but when she was alive, she sold.
Diana era uma estrela que podia se identificar com qualquer um.
She'd stopped off for a night at the Carlisle Hotel in New York, got up to her room when the phone rang, and the switchboard said, is that the Princess of Wales? Yes. Well, there's a man on the phone says he's your husband, and says he's calling from a payphone down the street. His name's Charles Windsor. And she took the call. And she'd clearly worked out that some enterprising figure on the street had seen her flit from limo to lobby and thought, my God, was that who I thought it was? Put through the call, and she had apparently a fascinating 40-minute conversation with whoever this was. And what she particularly liked, and we all laughed about enormously afterwards, was the fact that this guy would then reel into a bar and say, you never guess who I've just been talking to on the phone. And everyone would say, yeah, and I'm the Queen of Sheba.
Quando foi impedida de comparecer ao Royal Ascot, ela levou os filhos ao Planet Hollywood. Enquanto seus parentes andavam de carruagem, Diana roubou a cena mais uma vez. Os amigos de Charles pretendiam recuperar a imagem do príncipe. Charles ajudou o jornalista Jonathan Dimbleby a fazer um documentário de 2 horas e meia sobre ele. Na noite em que o programa foi exibido na ITV, Diana programou seu videocassete e saiu para uma festa da Vanity Fair na Serpentine Gallery, em Londres.
When her car drew up and she leapt out of it in the most amazing way and rushed up to me.
She looked fabulous, and nobody was going to talk about it, and I don't think anybody knew what he was going to say on TV that night.
Dentre os anfitriões estava o crítico conceituado da família real.
I went up to be introduced, and so I said, it's delightful to meet you, and we Republicans must stick together. And she laughed prettily. When large men closed in on me and said, what on earth do you mean by that? And I said, well, she's done more to bring about a republic by apparently not trying than I ever have by trying, and I felt it was only fair to compliment her on it. She seemed to get the joke anyway.
Quando Diana voltou para casa, descobriu que diante de 14 milhões de telespectadores, o príncipe Charles admitira seu caso com Camilla Parker Bowles.
Mrs. Parker Bowles is a great friend of mine, and she has been a friend for a very long time, and along with a lot of other friends, and will continue to be a friend for a very long time.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down. Us both having tried.
A confirmação de Charles acabou prejudicando sua popularidade. Diana ainda estava vencendo a guerra do casal de Gales. Mas os aliados do marido estavam prestes a lançar um contra-ataque devastador.
Concônica, todos querem sair na foto.
3 semanas atrás, o dono de uma grande rede de lojas viu na TV uma artista do momento usando um diferente par de botas de 2 cores. Ele percebeu a oportunidade e entrou em contato com designers, fornecedores, distribuidores e 200 mil clientes ligados em moda. 3 semanas depois, o relatório da rede de lojas indicava a venda de 19 mil pares de botas de 2 cores, sem falar nos 6.500 cintos de 2 cores que combinam com as botas. SAP.
Existe um mundo misterioso onde se inventam, testam e vendem brinquedos. Onde se trabalha muito a sério para criar as novas febres. E onde colecionar brinquedos não é para crianças. Dos mais antigos aos mais modernos, conheça o mundo secreto dos brinquedos. 2 de setembro, em People and Arts. Você está vendo People and Arts.
Do the maximum to make sure that the citizens can continue sleeping quietly tonight.
2 povos, 2 horas mostrando o cotidiano de um conflito carregado de séculos de ódio, numa reportagem exclusiva da BBC. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts. Um raio-x dos casos criminosos mais surpreendentes. Um perfil dos seus protagonistas. Uma reconstrução passo a passo de como foram cometidos. Da ideia até sua realização. Estes são delitos que ninguém achava possível, até que alguém teve a coragem de executá-los. Golpes geniais. Em People and Arts. Ian Wright e Justine Shapiro, os viajantes mais invejados da TV. Com uma pequena mudança. Mochileiros é agora o nome do programa que traz o que existe de mais emocionante e curioso no mundo. Nada se esconde entre a câmera e a realidade. Mais destinos, a mesma diversão de sempre. Seu programa favorito com um nome diferente e um novo horário. Mochileiros, segundas, quartas e sextas, em People and Arts.
Ce sont les choses qui, là, tem coisa lá, vida.
O que interessa para ele é a música. Não importa a raça, a língua, o país, as raízes.
For me, it's all just music that I love and I'm passionate about.
As misturas sonoras estão em toda parte e David Byrne está sempre em busca de músicos que não têm medo de arriscar. Conheça o homem por trás destes excêntricos experimentos. David Byrne, em busca de novos ritmos. Amanhã, em People and Arts.
El señor Gaudí, cuando entró, que estábamos jugando al fútbol, pues me puso la mano a la cabeza y dice, tienes un pelo muy bonito. Sí, tenía el pelo rizadito. Y entonces fue cuando me preguntó para ser modelo. ¿Qué quiere decir ser modelo y qué tengo que hacer? Me puso un pequeño tablero, encima de un taburete de madera, y yo sentadito allí. Me daban unos caramelos. Y no hables, no, más que nada decía, no te muevas, porque se ve que me distraía. Yo quería ver qué hacían, porque sí, barro, sí, pero yo, ¿y qué hacen con el barro? Pensaba yo, pues me estaban haciendo mi figura. ¿Qué te parece? ¿Estarás allí arriba? Sí. Bueno, pues la impresión fue sí, pensé en el futuro de hoy y para mis hijos. Pensé, mira, mis hijos qué sensación pueden tener, qué gusto tendrán de tener esto. Así como mi madre me hizo la fotografía de la comunión también, pensando que para después, pues yo pensé que para ellos también sería esto. Pensar que su padre, pues mira, quedaría allí, y allí estoy.
Todas as quintas, abra o apetite com um episódio inédito da série Segredos de um Chefe de Cozinha. Jamie Oliver mostra sem inibições os segredos de um chefe de cozinha. Todas as quintas em O Mundo à la Carte, em People and Arts.
Enquanto a princesa confiante e elegante conquistava o mundo, em Londres, os amigos e aliados do príncipe Charles a descreviam de outra forma. Eles falaram com 2 escritores amigos, Penny Jr. e Jonathan Dimbleby. Dimbleby, um dos repórteres de televisão mais respeitados da Grã-Bretanha, estava escrevendo um livro sobre o príncipe Charles. livro com fontes incontestáveis, os amigos mais íntimos de Charles.
The friends were very protective of the prince and very distressed that he had been attacked by Diana when they had seen the way she had behaved.
Os amigos de Charles fizeram a Dimbleby relatos dramáticos sobre o comportamento de Diana, a maioria tirada dos primeiros anos de casamento. Disseram que era obcecada, assustadora e perturbada, que ela ouvia atrás das portas e violava a correspondência.
When he was first told about the way Diana behaved, I think he did think, you know, I'm being told this by friends of the prince, and this marriage has broken down, and this is just one lot slagging off the other side.
Os amigos de Charles contaram a Dimbleby que Diana gritava e saía correndo do quarto e que ameaçava o marido cheia de ódio.
Dimbleby did eventually come to believe what he was hearing.
Jonathan Dimbleby pegou suas anotações e consultou textos médicos. Foi quando ele descobriu que o comportamento que haviam descrito tinha os mesmos sintomas de uma doença psicológica chamada distúrbio de personalidade fronteiriça. Por carta, ele revelou aos produtores do programa.
I stumbled across the term borderline personality disorder in a variety of psychiatric journals while researching the symptoms of the princess's self-acknowledged condition, bulimia. I discovered that the two disorders are often associated with each other.
Dimbleby discutiu os supostos sintomas de Diana com 2 psiquiatras, mas ele não revelou que era ela a paciente em questão. Um dos psiquiatras foi o Dr. Paul Aylord, irmão do secretário particular do príncipe Charles, Richard Aylord. Auxiliado pelo Dr. Aylord para confirmar o diagnóstico teórico, Dimbleby escreveu um capítulo de seu livro alegando que Diana sofria de um distúrbio de personalidade fronteiriça. Mas estaria Diana, tão serena e consagrada no palco internacional, realmente sofrendo de uma doença mental? Seus amigos não acreditavam, mas eles próprios viram que ela tinha mudado depois daqueles meses conturbados.
When she moved out of Highgrove, she found some of Prince Charles's possessions, and she had a bonfire, and she put them on the bonfire. She was very vengeful.
She was very wary of people, very wary. If you weren't 100% for her, at her disposal, and to do what she wanted, when she wanted it, life could become very difficult.
Diana se afastou de alguns aliados naquela época. Um deles foi quem tinha ajudado na preparação do livro de Andrew Morton, James Coldhurst.
In the end, there was a parting of the ways, and a painful one. So James became ostracized, he sort of became a pariah. He said that she used to refer to him as that shit, which I think is a great shame, really, and to end to a sad story.
Mas todo aquele mau humor e desconfiança por parte de Diana significava que ela estava mentalmente perturbada. Quando foi publicado, o livro de Jonathan Dimbleby dava muitos indícios confirmando isso.
Her general demeanor seemed like something out of a nightmare, beyond all reason and out of control.
Mas Dimbleby não foi até o fim. Após várias conversas com o príncipe Charles, ele apagou do livro todas as referências diretas ao distúrbio de personalidade fronteiriça e retirou o capítulo que falava sobre o distúrbio. Mas o que Dimbleby tinha começado, outros levaram adiante. Annie Jr. foi uma das primeiras a escrever em detalhes sobre Diana e o distúrbio de personalidade fronteiriça.
Dimbleby helped me come to the syndrome. There were several people actually who had mentioned borderline personality disorder. Dimbleby was one of them, and when I then researched the subject further, I mean, I discovered that actually it was absolutely spot on for the kind of behavior that Diana exhibited.
Um psiquiatra e amigo de Diana diz o contrário.
In my 32 years as a consultant psychiatrist, I've treated many, many patients with borderline personality disorder. And it's a very serious, lifelong, pervasive condition. I met Princess Diana and I spoke to her, and she was able to perform extremely well in all areas of her life that the public knew about. My professional opinion is it would not have been possible for her to meet with heads of state, to assume all these responsibilities that she did all over the world if she had a serious personality disorder.
I think she learned to handle herself. And if you're going against the nasty boys, you've got to learn how to handle yourself. But I remember a kind, gentle, sympathetic, loving person who was changed by the position she found herself in.
You only have to say somebody's unbalanced or mentally unstable, and it's a dreadful thing to say, because even if it's not true, it sticks.
Outras histórias publicadas nos jornais causaram ainda mais problemas para Diana. James Hewitt contou sua história para a autora do livro Princesa Apaixonada. Hewitt foi pago para isso.
Yes, I was paid for an interview. I regret that very much. I don't see that it makes that much difference whether one was paid or not. The fact that I did it at all, I regret, and it was a mistake. Had one not made the mistake, for all the probably the right reasons, but it was a mistake nevertheless, things would have panned out differently for me, I'm sure. You know, I tried to rectify a situation, and it went wrong. I don't think it's damaged anybody, particularly other than myself.
Certa noite, no outono de 1995, uma equipe de televisão entrou disfarçada no Palácio de Kensington. Durante meses, os jornais transbordavam de histórias comprometedoras sobre a vida amorosa de Diana e seu estado de espírito. Ela estava começando a perder o apoio do público. Por isso, resolveu usar o meio de comunicação mais poderoso do mundo para esclarecer seu conflito com o príncipe Charles de uma vez por todas.
She won't go quietly. That's the problem. I'll fight till the end, because I believe that I have a role to fulfill. And I got 2 children to bring up.
Só na Grã-Bretanha, 23 milhões de pessoas viram Diana atacar Charles e Camilla.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Diana também respondeu às críticas. Nos meses anteriores, os jornais tinham publicado que ela fizera um número absurdo de ligações para um marchand casado.
There were also a series of telephone calls which allegedly were made by you to a Mr. Oliver Hoare. Did you make what were described as nuisance phone calls?
I was reputed to have made 300 telephone calls in a very short space of time, which, bearing my lifestyle at that time, made me a very busy lady. No, I didn't, but that again was a huge move to discredit me, and very nearly did me in, the injustice of it.
Diana told me that she made probably 300 or 400 telephone calls to Oliver Hoare. She made them from phone boxes, from different addresses. She wore disguises to go to the phone boxes. She wore gloves, and she really covered her tracks, but she did make the phone calls. If he didn't answer the phone, she normally put the phone down.
Had you made any of those calls at all?
I used to, yes, I had rung up, yes.
Once, twice, 3 times?
I don't know, but there's a period of 6 to 9 months, a few times. But certainly, I'm not an obsessive manner, no.
She was actually worried that she might be arrested and charged with making nuisance calls.
O programa Newsnight da BBC reuniu um grupo para debater sobre a entrevista de Diana logo depois da exibição. Ela foi representada por Anthony Holden e Charles pelo ministro do governo Nicholas Soames, um de seus amigos pessoais.
I think we were all in our different ways thinking, well, she's not going to say anything very interesting.
Did your relationship go beyond a close friendship?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Wait a minute, did she just admit adultery with Hewitt?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him. But I was very let down.
My God, and this program, for us as for everybody, moved into a different stratosphere. And when she came up with, well, I want to be Queen of Hearts, I want to be Queen of People's Hearts, Nicky Soames, by this time getting very indignant, said, I bet you wrote that, Holden. And sure, he let rip.
It really is the sort of advanced stages of paranoia. So she's made it all up. She's paranoid. I've simply an idea, but it seems to me like the advanced stages of paranoia.
Seeing him and hearing him say this publicly, I felt was a pretty important development. There he was going out on a limb on behalf of his prince. It seemed to me that this was the end game.
Had you made any of those calls at all?
Mas o momento mais crítico da entrevista de Diana foi quando ela falou sobre o futuro do marido.
Do you think he would wish to be king?
There was always conflict on that subject with him when we discussed it. And I understood that conflict because it's a very demanding role, being Prince of Wales, but it's equally a more demanding role being king. And being Prince of Wales produces more freedom now, and being king would be a little bit more suffocating. And because I know the character, I would think that the top job, as I call it, would bring enormous limitations to him. And I don't know whether he could adapt to that.
It gave ammunition to those people who opposed her unnecessarily. It made the situation irretrievable. And I'm sure that those people who were advising the Prince of Wales said, I told you so. That's what she's all about.
Após 2 anos de fofocas, subterfúgios e exageros, essa foi a última gota. Para Diana e Charles, o divórcio era inevitável.
The princess talked to me on occasion about what might have been, and that prompted me to feel, perhaps wrongly, that there was some hope. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The two camps had become so entrenched and so deeply divided, and the feeling so bitter, that it was not possible to find any common ground.
Versão brasileira, Clone.
Você está vendo o People in Us.
Boa tarde. Vocês têm CDs de jazz?
Isso é uma pet shop.
Rex.
Há momentos na vida em que a coisa mais importante do mundo é um presentinho. Visa em todos os momentos.
Boa tarde. Vocês têm CDs de jazz?
Alguns eventos podem mudar o mundo para sempre. Em setembro, um ano depois dos atentados em Nova York, People and Arts lembra a data com 2 programas marcantes. Você vai conhecer a cara do mal, a logística de uma grande conspiração e entrar no coração de quem ainda não se consolou. Em setembro, em People and Arts, faça a conexão com aqueles que viram de perto o mundo mudar. Bem mais perto que você.
Diana vivia cercada de jornalistas. Tudo o que ela fazia e dizia era divulgado. Mas mesmo sendo objeto de fascinação mundial, ela só queria levar uma vida normal. Diana podia ser ardilosa e manipuladora, mas nos últimos meses de vida ela demonstrou ter qualidades que tornaram sua morte a mais lamentada do século XX. Diana. A história de uma princesa. Último capítulo. No início de 1995, Diana sofria cada vez mais pressão para concordar com o divórcio. As relações com o príncipe Charles e a rainha estavam tensas. Durante anos, Diana ficou sob a proteção de guarda-costas reais. Mas ela dizia que isso tirava sua privacidade e queria se livrar deles.
People like me always tell her, don't be ridiculous, look what happened to Greta Garbo. You don't want to wind up in a headscarf hiding in doorways in Manhattan. There is no way, you should not dispense with the protection officers.
Mas Diana estava decidida. Assim, em vez de ficar perto de seguranças, ficou perto de fotógrafos.
It did get more aggressive for her because there was no one to say, stand back, boys. And there was no one with that little hint of authority in her voice to make sure that if you didn't stand back, you were going to have your collar filled.
My God, the prices of the pictures was going through the roof. If Princess Diana is going to be photographed getting a bargain ticket, what else can we get? So suddenly, sitting on the Princess Diana's tail for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, became very much worth it.
There was one photographer in particular who used to really speak to the princess in the most appalling way. He talked about her as the loon, meaning she was crazy.
O fotógrafo em questão era Mark Saunders.
As an in-joke, you would say, is it a loony lunch? Which would mean, what's the situation? Is it all clear today, or is she in a bad mood? And if the answer was, yep, it's Looney Tunes, that meant keep a low profile. It was genuinely a term of endearment, a laugh, an in-joke. She got into a taxi and put her head down between her legs. And one of the Spanish photographers said, why don't you put your head up and start acting like a fucking princess? And I myself, as a photographer, was there, was part of that. And that's certainly not something I would look back on with any sort of pride.
Out. O-U-T, out. Have a nice trip, ma'am.
Diana só se sentia protegida do assédio da imprensa nos Estados Unidos. Ela dizia que se sentia em casa e até cogitou morar lá definitivamente. Sua melhor amiga, a brasileira Lúcia Flecha de Lima, tinha trocado Londres pelos Estados Unidos e Diana a visitava regularmente.
I really loved her as a daughter, and she was a most wonderful friend to me. She brought a lot of joy, of light, of laughter, of dramas into my life. She made me feel young again. She made me feel her age. We would share things.
Flecha de Lima achava que Diana precisava de mais apoio nos Estados Unidos, alguém em quem pudesse confiar. Durante vários almoços, Lúcia submeteu à prova possíveis confidentes da princesa.
Over a period of about 9 months, Lucia told me quite a few controversial things that people could have sold to the tabloids and all sorts of things, and I think they tested me.
Discrição e confiabilidade eram as principais qualidades a serem testadas.
after that, Lucia called me up one day and said, would I consent to being the friend of the Princess of Wales? And I said to her I was deeply, deeply honored and that I would never let her down and that I would be a loyal and terrific friend and always be there for her. And she said, Lana, we know an awful lot about you and Diana will be so delighted.
A empresária e estilista de modas Lana Marks, com seus contatos em Hollywood e na Casa Branca, pertencia ao mesmo círculo de Diana e, acima de tudo, era de total confiança.
I would bring her for lunch and we had a great variety of conversations. Some of them were very serious and others were just two girlfriends having been to a charity event the night before and chatting about who was wearing what and who said what to who, and just a load of fun.
De volta a Londres, enquanto visitava um amigo que estava internado no hospital Brompton, Diana conheceu o cirurgião Hasnat Khan. Ele tinha deixado o Paquistão para estudar com um dos maiores cardiologistas da Grã-Bretanha.
Diana told me that Hasnat Khan was a wonderful gentleman who came into her life when she was most vulnerable and needing somebody who could give her security, who could help her through this very difficult time when she was breaking up with Prince Charles.
O médico odiava a publicidade e Diana fez de tudo para manter o relacionamento em segredo.
She used to wear disguises, she used to wear wigs, and they went out all over the country. She went out to Ronnie Scott's club with Hasnat Khan, wearing a wig. She wasn't detected.
Alguns jornais ficaram sabendo da vida particular de Diana, mas não sabiam de todos os detalhes.
There was one particular occasion where she gave an exclusive to the Sunday papers to say that she'd been visiting patients at the Brompton Hospital. In fact, she hadn't spent the whole evening at the Brompton Hospital. She'd spent some of it at Hasnat Khan's flat. And she told me, whatever happened, please don't say anything about it. So when I was asked about it, I said that, no, as far as I know, she'd spent the whole time at the Brompton Hospital.
Diana e Charles estavam tentando conseguir o melhor acordo para o divórcio. Diana queria que a imprensa a apoiasse e contratou uma consultora de imprensa.
Good morning.
Can we ask your reaction to getting the job?
I'm absolutely delighted. I think it's going to be very difficult, but very good and hard work.
The situation when I arrived there in January '96 was that most of the journalists themselves didn't believe what she was saying, didn't trust, the messages that were put out, because she had tried to manipulate them too often.
Juntas, Diana e Atkinson armaram uma ofensiva junto a redatores e escritores.
Chatting with Diana was a revelation because she was very candid, surprisingly candid. She called Buckingham Palace the leper colony, and if you wanted to know what she thought about the Queen Mother, she called the Queen Mother the chief leper in the leper colony.
Diana foi além dos apelidos maldosos com Tig Leg Burke, a babá que o príncipe Charles tinha contratado para cuidar de seus filhos. Quando Tig foi vista servindo champanhe ao príncipe William em um piquenique da escola, Diana pediu a seu escritório que informasse a imprensa.
We ran a story about what the princess had said about Tiggy Leg Burke, and the next day she went completely potty and said, "I never said that." Her aides rang up and they had clearly been told by the princess, "Get on the phone there and give that Higgins bloke a bollocking now." And they were in the invidious position of having to say, that is totally untrue. The princess can't understand why you wrote that. You know, you met her, you've seen her, and all that. And I said, but you know it's true. You told me.
3 months into the job, I realized that it was not perhaps as easy as I thought it was going to be. My client was far more mercurial than I had thought.
A assistência que Diana dava aos que sofriam de AIDS lhe concedeu a reputação de humanitária. Ela concordou em abrir uma nova clínica para a AIDS. Mas foi então que ela conheceu Aileen Getty, filha do bilionário americano Joe Paul Getty Jr.
I got into the department and found a message to say that Diana had decided that she was going to bring Aileen Getty. Now, Aileen Getty was a high-profile American with HIV and AIDS who had just hit London, was travelling around every television and radio studio in the capital talking about HIV and AIDS, had latched on to Diana. Diana was bringing her and Aileen Getty's entourage.
She, through meetings with Aileen Getty, was persuaded that this was a huge opportunity to broaden the objective, to draw attention to women and AIDS.
So I can remember ringing up Jane Atkinson and going bananas down the phone, sort of saying, it's not a zoo. She can't just bring all these people in. These are patients that we're dealing with.
And he was very angry. And he did shout at me down the telephone as to how I could have allowed this. So I told him to speak to her directly.
Diana came on and I said, Mom, listen, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter to me whether you come or not, okay? It really doesn't matter, but I'm not having you treating us in this way. I'm quite happy to call it all off now. So, oh, Michael, you must trust me. It'll all be all right. Anyway, she arrived, and we had got the whole thing worked out. Aileen Getty would be sort of taken by one of us, sat at the back of this room, Diana sitting in the front. I got up, having sat next to Diana, and Diana went like that to Aileen Getty. Aileen Getty came from the back of the room to the front of the room.
The princess motioned Aileen to sit very close to her. She held hands with Aileen all the way through, and that was the photograph that got used.
Essa foi a última aparição de Diana para aquela instituição. Ela havia perdido a confiança do maior especialista em AIDS da Grã-Bretanha.
Because she was trying to sort so many other things out in her life, she became distracted by that. It became very difficult to know that she would deliver on things that you'd ask her to do. To be quite honest, by the end of her life, we hardly asked her to do anything. It just wasn't worth it.
Diana perderia mais aliados no ano seguinte.
Do the maximum to make sure that the citizens can continue sleeping quietly tonight.
Dois povos, 2 horas mostrando o cotidiano de um conflito carregado de séculos de ódio, numa reportagem exclusiva da BBC. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts. Segure-se bem na poltrona. Controle seus nervos.
This is a police inquiry and I'm going to proceed as I see fit.
Porque todas as sextas, sábados e domingos, você tem um encontro cara a cara com o medo. Com os nossos filmes de suspense. Todas as sextas, sábados e domingos, em People and Arts.
Acho que tudo começou naquela festa de Natal. Estávamos um pouco bêbados. Eu não tinha ideia que ele gostava tanto assim de mim. Que a mulher dele e meu marido... Não posso acreditar que eles estivessem tendo um caso. Nós tínhamos o casamento perfeito. Até aquele dia.
Nenhum beijo é inocente. Nenhuma cicatriz é invisível. E nenhum casamento é perfeito. Ciúme doentio. Amanhã, em People and Arts.
Talvez tenha sido culpa minha.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I was looking for your scissors.
Alguns eventos podem mudar o mundo para sempre. Em setembro, um ano depois dos atentados em Nova York, People and Arts lembra a data com 2 programas marcantes. Você vai conhecer a cara do mal, a logística de uma grande conspiração e entrar no coração de quem ainda não se consolou. Em setembro, em People and Arts, faça a conexão com aqueles que viram de perto o mundo mudar. Bem mais perto que você.
Para crescer com dentes e ossos muito mais fortes, ele precisa de Alpo Júnior. Alpo Júnior é o único que garante 15% a mais de absorção de cálcio. Alpo Júnior, 15% a mais de cálcio para dentes e ossos muito mais fortes.
Em julho de 1996, o divórcio de Diana foi concluído. A remoção do título de Alteza Real de Diana despertou grande interesse da imprensa. Um dia depois, ela cortaria laços com 100 instituições de caridade, ficando com apenas 6. Diana tinha tudo planejado há meses.
I don't think that I and her staff ever thought there was a good time for her to do it. We always knew that it was going to be a negative media story. She tried, I think, to do it as a story which would give her some sympathy for losing the HRH title.
Alguns jornais apoiaram Diana, mas não a maioria.
She was very angry because the media had been very negative to her. And I explained that I had only answered the questions in the way that we'd agreed. And she said that, accused me of not doing so. So it was, you know, it's impossible for me to do my job in an environment like that, and I came quite clearly to see that.
Depois de apenas 8 meses, Jane Atkinson se demitiu. Ela foi uma das últimas a renunciar entre tantos outros consultores. Diante das dificuldades em casa, Diana se afastava cada vez mais da Grã-Bretanha, tanto na vida pessoal quanto na vida pública. Ela se tornou presença marcante no meio humanitário norte-americano e sua presença garantia uma cobertura positiva da imprensa e doações vultosas. A alta sociedade nova-iorquina compareceu a um jantar em que a princesa receberia o prêmio de Humanitária do Ano.
There were any number of celebrities in this town who actually had offered to up their donations. I mean, there's one gentleman who offered to up his donation from, he used to buy a $10,000 table at our dinner, and asked if he could donate $50,000, but the caveat was that he had to sit next to the princess on the dais, which we declined actually. The evening wore on, and Dr. Kissinger gave the princess her award, and what she talked about was not herself or the organization, but what it meant to be a volunteer.
I think of the parents who this very night are standing around a hospital bed, not knowing if their child will wake in the morning.
And a woman actually who was sitting in the audience somewhat near me, much to my dismay, actually yelled out to her, "Where are your children, Diana?" At that moment, a hush came over the crowd, and she simply looked to the back of the room and said,
At school.
And proceeded on with the rest of her speech, for which she got a standing ovation.
A elegância de Diana sob pressão explicava, em parte, por que ela era tão brilhante para angariar fundos.
In a jaded world, you're always looking for somebody that's just trying to go out and make a difference. Our average dinner probably averaged $1.2 million. That night, our dinner was $2.2 million. And we've never come close to it since, nor do I expect to.
Diana conseguia angariar $1 milhão a mais por noite, mas ela queria mais, um cargo oficial. Foi então que ela procurou o primeiro-ministro britânico John Major.
Diana wanted to be an ambassador for the United Kingdom. She invited John Major to discuss it with him, and he agreed it would be a good idea.
Logo depois da conversa, Diana dirigiu-se para a Center Point, uma instituição para desabrigados, a fim de fazer um discurso.
She had a huge goggle factor. You know, people wanted to see her, and that in itself meant that she could head up an organisation like Center Point.
I'm appalled at the dangers young people face on the streets and how vulnerable they are to exploitation.
It became a huge furore. It was talked about in the Houses of Parliament, and you know, Center Point's name was. We'd politicised the royal family, apparently, by actually getting her to talk about youth homelessness.
Apenas 2 dias antes, a rainha tinha falado sobre o cargo de embaixadora de Diana com John Major.
He had to get permission from the royal family, and they blocked it. And I was there on the morning that she got a fax saying that unfortunately she couldn't be an ambassador to the United Kingdom. And she was absolutely furious. She was really, really cross. She started screaming and said, "I can't understand why they treat me like this."
Mas Diana não seria intimidada. Quando ela soube que a Cruz Vermelha estava realizando uma campanha de âmbito mundial para proibir as minas terrestres, ela pediu para visitar Angola, o país com o maior número de minas do mundo.
She did call me to say, what should she wear? I have to say, I found that highly amusing, as even my wife wouldn't ask that question of me, but I told her what I was going to wear. I mean, chino trousers and an open neck shirt, and that the staff with me would be wearing the same kind of thing, because we were going into some pretty dirty, some pretty awful places.
Na festa de recepção havia jornalistas da guerra.
I was very cynical about Diana, and I thought the trip was important because I'd worked a lot as a correspondent covering the issue of landmines in Mozambique and Angola, which her trip was meant to highlight. But I just saw it as a big publicity stunt, another chance for her to be photographed in front of victims looking beautiful.
It's an enormous privilege for me to have been invited here to Angola in order to assist the Red Cross in its campaign to ban once and for all anti-personal landmines.
O pedido de Diana para uma proibição mundial aborreceu um membro do governo britânico. Mais uma vez, ela se viu no centro de uma discussão política.
Ma'am, the government minister's home has said you're a loose cannon by supporting this campaign. Do you have any reaction to that?
Well, Jenny, I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all.
Her reaction was really one of astonishment. I mean, why is this being said? Why are people wanting to do this? What do I have to do?
Oh, I'm really ready to burst into tears now.
Don't worry.
Who said I'm a loose cannon?
If you try and think, who in the world would you identify who could give a very simple global message and get people to listen and take notice? Well, I can't think of anybody even now that would do that. Not a single individual. And she did it on that visit without any question whatsoever.
A visita de Diana pressionou ainda mais os governos a assinarem um acordo mundial proibindo as minas terrestres.
Angola is probably one of the few places she could go to, and people really had no idea who she was.
Because of that problem.
She went to some of the bedsides, and I actually interpreted for her because I speak Portuguese.
What happened here?
And there was a little girl lying who was clearly in a terrible condition. All her insides were hanging out, and she caught the attention of Princess Diana, who started asking her questions.
That's right. So that's why presumably she's lost the weight that she has. She's lost the weight because she can't take in nutrition.
I think that's enough.
She eats, but...
After she'd moved on, I stayed and just asked the girl a few more questions. And she said to me, who is that? And I said, she's a princess from England, from far away. And she said to me, is she an angel? And I found that really moving. This little girl probably died a few hours after that. I know she died. And it somehow seemed nice that that was the last thing that she saw, was this beautiful lady that she thought was an angel.
Eles vão de país em país, buscando tratamentos de fertilidade em outras fronteiras, por causa de proibições ou restrições em seus países.
This treatment is not allowed, and it is against religion.
Não importa o quanto custe ou quais os riscos.
Life expectancy is extending a lot.
Quando se realmente quer ter um filho, a única saída é se tornar um dos turistas da fertilidade. Terça, 3 de setembro, em People and Arts. Um beijo. O encontro de dois olhares. O início de um amor. E de uma vida a dois. E depois, que maior felicidade e desafio na vida do que receber a notícia de que um bebê está vindo. Todas as tardes, em People and Arts, seu coração vai bater mais forte. Álbum de casamento e história de um bebê. De segunda a sexta, em People and Arts. Quem entra neste pronto-socorro tem apenas um desejo: não morrer. Aqueles que aqui trabalham fazem de tudo por aqueles que chegam. O tempo vai se esgotando e as dificuldades crescendo. O momento é agora ou nunca. Estado crítico, todas as quartas, em People and Arts.
Se você não soubesse ler, o que seria melhor? Alguém ler isso para você? É assim que a Care combate a pobreza, gerando independência. A Care trabalha em parceria com a comunidade para que ela se torne autossustentável. Seja membro fundador. Care, somando forças até o fim da pobreza.
Ce sont les choses qui latam e coisa lá vida.
O que interessa para ele é a música. Não importa a raça, a língua, o país, as raízes.
For me, it's all just music that I love, that I'm passionate about.
As misturas sonoras estão em toda parte e David Byrne está sempre em busca de músicos que não têm medo de arriscar. Conheça o homem por trás destes excêntricos experimentos. David Byrne, em busca de novos ritmos. Amanhã, em People and Arts. Nesta segunda, em Os 10 Mais, conheça os 10 espiões mais ousados. Os homens e mulheres responsáveis pelas mais perigosas transações de segredos de Estado. Os 10 espiões mais famosos. Nesta segunda, às 10 da noite, em People and Arts. Como?
Um tipo de atadura.
Quando?
À meia-noite.
Por quê?
Você mentiu para mim.
Quem? Nesta nova temporada, Sam vai se deparar com os casos mais arrepiantes que você pode imaginar. E não vai parar de investigar até encontrar todas as respostas. Não perca nenhum episódio de Testemunha Silenciosa. Todas as sextas, em People and Arts. Entre no coração e na mente daqueles que vêm lutando nesta terra coberta de sangue. Dois povos, dois pontos de vista. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts. Alguns eventos podem mudar o mundo para sempre. Em setembro, um ano depois dos atentados em Nova York, People and Arts lembra a data com 2 programas marcantes. Você vai conhecer a cara do mal, a logística de uma grande conspiração e entrar no coração de quem ainda não se consolou. Em setembro, em People and Arts, faça a conexão com aqueles que viram de perto o mundo mudar. Bem mais perto que você.
Em maio de 1997, Diana foi ao Paquistão. Aparentemente, o motivo era visitar o Hospital do Câncer, administrado pelo amigo Imran Khan e a esposa britânica Jemima. Mas o verdadeiro motivo era se encontrar com a família de seu amante, Hasnat Khan.
I think she would have come anyway, but also I think she felt that it was a good chance, a good opportunity to meet Dr. Hasnat's family. She'd been involved with him for 2 years, and Princess Diana wanted to marry him. And she really, she had decided that he was the man.
No entanto, a família de Hasnat estava dividida e ele se recusou a assumir um compromisso.
She went from great joy to great despair. Sometimes she said, "Oh God, it's never going to work. He doesn't want to see me anymore."
I had it in my mind that I was going to talk to him because having, married someone from outside my culture, maybe, if there was something that could be cleared or if there was some advice that could be given, maybe I would be able to help.
Mas antes que Imran Khan pudesse agir, Diana foi para Saint-Tropez com os filhos. Ela tinha sido convidada para ir à casa de um amigo da família Spencer, o empresário egípcio e proprietário da loja de departamentos Harrods, em Londres, Mohammed Al-Fayed. Ele não havia conseguido tirar o passaporte britânico e afirmou ter subornado vários políticos britânicos. Diana chegou no dia 11 de julho. A imprensa só chegou no dia seguinte.
Nous étions tous au même endroit, tous alignés comme un photocall, exactement comme au Festival de Cannes. Et devant nous, nous avions un spectacle qui commençait tous les jours environ à la même heure, c'est-à-dire vers 11 h. Diana en train de sauter à l'eau, plonger, faire du jet ski, en maillot de bain, ne se cachant pas face à nous. Enfin, c'était extraordinaire, je vous assure que ça, je ne l'avais jamais vu.
No mesmo dia, Al-Fayed chamou o filho para se juntar à princesa. Dodi Al-Fayed, de 42 anos, trabalhava como produtor de cinema em Hollywood. Os fotógrafos o confundiram com um guarda-costas. Em Saint-Tropez, o proprietário de um restaurante recebeu o grupo.
Il a dit, tout le monde est parti, sauf Diana et son garde du corps. Ils sont partis 5-10 minutes après et ils sont ressortis d'ici, main dans la main. Ils sont montés dans la voiture et ils sont partis. Je lui dis, avec son garde du corps? Je lui dis, ben oui, avec son garde du corps. Je dis, après tout, c'est une femme, si elle a envie de sortir avec son garde du corps, elle fait ce qu'elle veut. Hein. Bon.
Diana voltou para casa para uma reunião com Hasnat Khan.
Diana told me that her relationship with Hasnat Khan was not going to go any further. And she said, I can't just sit home at Kensington Palace, Lana, and watch the four walls. I'm a young person. I need to get out.
Mas no final de julho, Diana voltou ao Mediterrâneo. Mas desta vez, estava sozinha com Dodi Al-Fayed.
Here was a gentleman who was giving her a very good time. He was attentive. She was having a lovely summer in beautiful circumstances in the south of France.
Dodi Al-Fayed was simply a rebound situation. Calculated, I suppose, to upset Hasnat Khan, the person she'd been seeing. I think it was simply a summer fling.
Esta foto foi tirada no 4º dia de viagem. Alguém próximo da princesa tinha chamado o famoso fotógrafo Jason Fraser e revelou onde ela estaria e com quem. Após 2 anos fugindo da imprensa com Hasnat Khan, esse seria um relacionamento que Diana não tentaria esconder. Durante a viagem, Lana Marks ligou para Diana. Elas combinaram de ir aos lagos italianos no final de agosto. Mas o pai de Lana morreu inesperadamente.
I called Diana and told her of my very sad news and that unfortunately I wouldn't be able to go away on vacation with her. But this left her with a free week at the end of her summer. And when Dodie asked if she would come back to the south of France, she agreed.
Enquanto Diana e Dodie viajavam pelo Mediterrâneo, Jason Fraser foi novamente informado sobre seu paradeiro. Mas desta vez, os telefonemas vieram da própria Diana. Ela perguntava: está fotografando? O que você fotografou? Por que as fotos estão embaçadas? Diana também ligou para os amigos para falar sobre o relacionamento.
Diana told me she was very happy with Dodie Fayed. I think she felt that she might have found a new family. And that's something that she always missed, family life. I think she could have got married. And it could have been the fairy tale ending that she wanted.
Mas Diana disse uma coisa diferente para cada pessoa.
Diana told me that her summer was coming to an end now, and she had asked for an earlier flight back to London to return 2 days earlier because she'd had enough.
Mas Dodie convenceu Diana a ficar mais tempo, e no dia 30 de agosto eles voaram para Paris. O casal passou o dia andando de carro pela cidade, sempre perseguidos por fotógrafos.
The word was out that the princess was around. That was the most aggressive sort of paparazzi we'd seen throughout the whole of the summer.
Dodie planejava sair para uma noite romântica, mas os fotógrafos ficaram de plantão em seu apartamento em Paris e Dodie mudou de planos várias vezes.
When we left that evening, myself and Kes still didn't know the venue that they were leaving to.
Tempers were getting a bit short. It was very close that somebody was going to get injured.
O casal finalmente resolveu jantar no Hotel Ritz, de propriedade do pai de Dodie.
The pressure was growing because of the number of paparazzi around. Dodie was angry and the princess was shaking up about the whole thing, I think.
She was crying, and I think because she was upset was the main reason why Dodie flashed up at us. He said, how the f*** did you let this fiasco happen? And I didn't lose my temper, but I told him in the strongest terms that it wouldn't have happened if he'd told us where we were going.
Dodie chamou um novo motorista, o chefe da segurança do hotel, Henri Paul. Dodie planejava sair discretamente pelos fundos do hotel.
We'd gone to the back and there was a very happy atmosphere there. They were laughing and joking. We walked out on Henri Paul, went to the driver's side and changed seats with the person who brought the vehicle around.
De acordo com a subsequente investigação francesa, Henri Paul estava bêbado. Os fotógrafos começaram a persegui-los de perto. Henri Paul tomou a decisão fatal. Ele não seguiu diretamente para o apartamento de Dodie. Em vez disso, acelerou ao longo da margem do rio e deixou os fotógrafos para trás. Ele entrou em alta velocidade no túnel Dalma e perdeu o controle do carro. À 00:30, o carro bateu em cheio numa coluna de concreto.
French police say Diana, Princess of Wales, has been seriously injured and her companion Dodi Al-Fayed killed in a road accident in the French capital, Paris.
Dodi e Henri Paul morreram na hora. Diana e o segurança de Dodi, Trevor Rhys-Jones, ficaram gravemente feridos. Diana murmurava palavras sem sentido. O ministro francês do interior e seu assessor esperavam no hospital quando entrou a ambulância em que estava Diana.
Le ministre et moi, le ministre d'un côté et moi de l'autre, nous avons sorti le corps, nous avons tiré la civière et la princesse avait un appareil respiratoire sur le visage. Elle avait des ecchymoses sous les yeux et elle respirait évidemment encore.
Às 4h da manhã, os médicos saíram da sala de cirurgia.
En fait, je comprends quand les médecins qui ont passé 2 heures à essayer de la ranimer, les réanimateurs, les cardiologues qui étaient là, quand ils remontent, on sent que tout est fini.
Il a dit au ministre, il a fait un petit signe au ministre, le ministre est sorti. Je suis sorti avec le ministre derrière, et il a dit au ministre, il lui a dit, elle est morte.
We watched the news coming up. It seemed to strike everybody connected with it. I had photographers too stunned to speak on the phone. I had a little girl come in. I'd phoned someone and got a girl to come in and help me on the desk. She was useless. Poor girl just cried for 5 hours.
1 hora depois que Diana morreu, 6 fotógrafos já estavam presos.
The story began to come back that she'd been pursued by photographers. I felt ill at the thought of this. And I felt guilt and sadness.
Em Balmoral, na Escócia, a família real ficou estarrecida.
I was told by 2 sources, one royal, one ministerial, that there was a tremendous breakdown between the Charles camp and the Queen's camp. The Queen did not want Diana's body to go to any royal palace, royal chapel. She wanted it left at an undertaker's. Charles, driven by the boys, wanted a proper royal send-off and all the protocol to kick in. The whole thing deteriorated into the most appalling slanging match, which at one point found Charles shouting at Sir Robert Fellows, Diana's own brother-in-law, the Queen's secretary, "Why don't you just go and impale yourself on your own flagstaff?" An extraordinary phrase. And another royal official saying, "Well, what would you rather, ma'am, that she be taken away in a Harrods van?"
8 horas depois que Diana morreu, a família real deixou Balmoral para ir à missa dominical em uma igreja próxima. Como sempre, desde o divórcio, o nome de Diana não era mais mencionado nas orações reais. Em Londres, do lado de fora do Palácio de Buckingham, os primeiros sinais da reação do público pela morte de Diana. Um pouco mais tarde, contra a vontade da rainha, o príncipe Charles foi a Paris buscar o corpo de Diana.
Se você não soubesse ler, o que seria melhor? Alguém ler isso para você? É assim que a Quer combate a pobreza, gerando independência. A Quer trabalha em parceria com a comunidade para que ela se torne autossustentável. Seja membro fundador. Quer, somando forças até o fim da pobreza.
Moi,
acho que tudo começou naquela festa de Natal. Estávamos um pouco bêbados. Eu não tinha ideia que ele gostava tanto assim de mim. Que a mulher dele e meu marido... Não posso acreditar que eles estivessem tendo um caso. Nós tínhamos o casamento perfeito. Até aquele dia.
Nenhum beijo é inocente, nenhuma cicatriz é invisível e nenhum casamento é perfeito. Ciúme doentio. Amanhã, em People and Arts.
Talvez tenha sido culpa minha.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I was looking for your scissors.
Memórias reprimidas, extraterrestres, guerras, medo da morte, do demônio e do desconhecido. A ignorância pode ser cômoda, mas a verdade é a chave para o poder. Os significados estão todos escondidos e o mundo está cheio de conspirações. Todas as quintas em People and Arts. Veja antes que seja censurado. Você está vendo People and Arts. Eles vão de país em país, buscando tratamentos de fertilidade em outras fronteiras, por causa de proibições ou restrições em seus países.
This treatment is not allowed, and it is against religion.
Não importa o quanto custe ou quais os riscos.
Life expectancy is extending a lot.
Quando se realmente quer ter um filho, a única saída é se tornar um dos turistas da fertilidade. Terça, 3 de setembro, em People and Arts.
Acho que o perigo, a adrenalina.
Eu acho a profissão de bombeiro muito perigosa.
Eu acho o bombeiro sexy.
Salvar a vida. Eu queria ser herói.
É um dever. É um encontro marcado sem data prevista. É um mundo de quem vive a prova de fogo. Novos episódios, todas as quartas, em People and Arts.
Do the maximum to make sure that the citizens can continue sleeping quietly tonight.
2 polos, 2 horas mostrando o cotidiano de um conflito carregado de séculos de ódio. Numa reportagem exclusiva da BBC. Você nunca esteve tão perto da guerra sem fim. 5 de setembro, em People and Arts. Um raio-x dos casos criminosos mais surpreendentes. Um perfil dos seus protagonistas. Uma reconstrução passo a passo de como foram cometidos. Da ideia até sua realização. Estes são delitos que ninguém achava possível, até que alguém teve a coragem de executá-los. Golpes geniais. Em People and Arts.
Todo mundo está sabendo quando comprou ingresso e que está participando de um evento que é um evento de música, mas que tem essa ideia bacana, intrínseca dentro do festival de estar ajudando comunidades carentes, que uma parte dessa verba está indo para a galera que não tem dinheiro. Eu acho que as pessoas estão conscientes sim, mas não acho que lá na hora do show as pessoas vão estar discutindo essa questão. Acho que elas vão estar se divertindo, porque essa é a ideia.
O ser humano podia ser tão mais feliz, tão legal se usasse a cabeça, o que não costuma acontecer.
Eu apoio sempre que eu sou solicitada, a Sociedade Viva Cazuza, a comunidade de Vigário Geral, assim, eu já fui madrinha, né, do Afro Reggae. Eu estou sempre perto dessas pessoas, eu sempre chamo essas pessoas para trabalhar comigo, eu sempre estou disposta a me colocar, a minha pessoa, o meu trabalho, eu como artista, sempre que sou solicitada, estou lá presente e estou divulgando sempre que eu posso as causas dessas pessoas.
Acho que é o papel da música e principalmente do músico, para melhorar a vida, né? Tentar botar na cabeça de todo mundo que a vida seria muito melhor se o ser humano não fosse tão burro.
Nesta terça, em Um Mundo à la Carte, sua cozinha vai ganhar um ar mediterrâneo graças a Floyd. E depois conheça os segredos de um chefe de cozinha com Jamie Oliver. Nesta terça, em Um Mundo à la Carte, People and Arts.
O príncipe Charles ia trazer Diana de volta, mas a rainha ainda se recusava a conceder todas as honras reais para a ex-nora.
The row continued while Charles was in the air because, denied royal protocol, he now had to find some way of getting all the things which protocol would normally have provided. What kind of a coffin, the provision of flowers, guard of honor, flags, all the rest of it. And he was now having to call on the government, and there was effectively an open line from the flight deck to number 10.
Sa seule attitude du début jusqu'à la fin, ça a été de se soucier de la princesse de Galles. Sur des détails, on n'a pas retrouvé la deuxième boucle d'oreille. Il n'a cessé de dire non, elle ne peut pas partir sans sa deuxième boucle d'oreille. Enfin, des détails comme ça. On le sentait vraiment, vraiment marqué, complètement bouleversé par ce moment.
There was still a row burning as the plane was coming back as to where the body was actually going to go. The Queen pretty sure now that she'd got her way and that it was going to go straight to the Fulham Road undertakers, and Prince Charles determined to get it to St James's Palace to lie in the Chapel Royal there. The government was being asked to provide for both eventualities, but in the end Charles got his way.
Nas ruas ao redor dos palácios, a hostilidade contra a família real aumentava gradativamente. Muitos achavam que eles eram culpados por terem expulso Diana. Por não haver uma bandeira hasteada a meio pau no Palácio de Buckingham, muitos acharam que a rainha estava se recusando a ficar de luto.
Now, I know it's tradition that the flag flies at Buckingham Palace when only the royalty are there, but I really would have liked to have seen the flag flying half-mast there as well.
I think they treated her terrible. Absolutely shocking. I don't think they're the most cold people on this earth.
And a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, you're that chap from the telly. Can I just tell you this? Why isn't the Queen here? That's what I want to know. Why isn't the Queen here?"
I think it's disgraceful that they're not here in residence. And I think most people I've been speaking to this morning have said exactly the same thing.
And I went back to the studio, to my ITN studio, and told my bosses about all this. And their reaction was exactly the same as I know newspaper editors' reaction was. This is dangerous stuff.
Na quinta-feira, 4 dias depois da morte de Diana, os jornais compraram a briga.
There was a meeting to discuss the funeral, at which senior police officers were present and royal officials. A senior police officer at that meeting, I am told, expressed the view that the Prince of Wales would be booed or worse if he was to turn up in London at such a sensitive time.
No dia seguinte, a rainha retornou.
There were real worries, according to my ministerial source, about what kind of a reception the Queen was going to get. The worry was things would be thrown, and people would jeer or shout or abuse her. And so the decision was taken that they should do it as near the gates of Buckingham Palace as possible, so that an escape existed if anything went wrong. My royal source says that even the Queen was worried about what kind of a reception she was going to get. There was real fear that she's never previously experienced in her reign.
Mas a rainha faria a vontade do povo?
I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her 2 boys.
Na manhã do dia em que foi enterrada, mais de 1 milhão de pessoas esperavam no trajeto.
I'm picking my way through these crowds and bumping into this friend of mine who I'd not seen for a good few months, and always thought he was a bit of an anti-royalist, really. Certainly his position was, well, you know, take it or leave it, and, you know, what's it to me kind of thing. And there he was, with his mother, with a tent, you know, on the pavement, kipping out, and I'm like, you know, what are you doing here? And he just said, well, you know, we had to come. And I thought to myself, she probably would have liked that. That would have made her smile.
E finalmente, quebrando a tradição real, uma bandeira foi hasteada a meio pau no Palácio de Buckingham.
All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity. A very British girl who transcended nationality. Someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic.
Os aplausos que ecoaram do lado de fora da abadia de Westminster e que rapidamente se espalharam para o interior dela serviram para lembrar que durante anos Diana tinha lutado contra a instituição real. Por vezes, ela foi vingativa e caprichosa. Mas milhões no mundo todo lamentaram sua morte, por sua compaixão e por sua coragem. Qualidades que numa vida curta, mas encantadora, ela soube demonstrar tantas vezes tão bem.
Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister. The unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
Versão brasileira, Colônia.